Let's make it happen. All right, welcome back. We are going to continue where we left off with our Public Works Administration budget. We have multiple lines here to go through. And are you going into some of these CSAs as well, or?
We're prepared to.
Oh, yeah, you have the road benefit zones. Okay, so that's all there. And so let's go ahead and start there. We are on page D70. And I'm going to turn it over to Director DeLeon.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Board. I'm here this afternoon with Deputy Director of Public Works Administration, Alicia Ayala, and in the audience is our new Public Works Director, Glenn March. And so we're prepared. We were advised that brevity was going to be good, so we are going to give a brief overview of the department, and we will give you a brief overview and then be happy to answer any questions. And specifically, we'll look at vacancies and reserves, which I understand is one of the board's points of emphasis this year. So with that, we'll start with Public Works. The Public Works Department has 11 primary budget units and 34 secondary budget units. Those are the CSAs and subdivisions that you just asked about, Chair Sabatier. The department's main responsibilities include the maintenance of approximately 613 centerline miles of county roads, 125 miles of which are unpaved, 125 bridges, and I'm going to say thousands. We have lots and lots of culverts that we maintain. DPW admin, it's the budget unit that provides the fiscal and clerical services to both Public Works and Water Resources, and we can talk about that later if you have questions about that. Engineering and inspection services, they manage the development of capital improvement projects. The Public Works Department manages Lamson Field Airport, and we have a fleet maintenance division that oversees 132 vehicles in the county fleet and approximately 128 pieces of heavy equipment that they rent to the road department. Not a lot's changed with Public Works over the years. We work on projects. As you know, road maintenance is a challenge, and it's something that we tackle every day. We are really focusing on capital improvement projects and specifically road improvements. It was a promise that I made this board about this time last year. And we are working diligently with our consultant to get a project before you for approval and get that out to bid, and we're going to get as much built as we can this year. The road department is up on Cobb working on prep for that project, and so we've got a lot of projects. We've got a couple of bridge projects in construction right now, and so we have a lot of things going on with Public Works. Vacancies, we're in pretty decent shape right now, with the exception of our engineering and inspection division. If you recall, your board approved a contract with Coastland Engineering to provide staff augmentation services to the department. We are utilizing them on a number of projects, and they've been a real benefit to the department, and specifically the engineering and inspection division. In DPW admin, we have a total of 13 positions, 10 of which are funded full-time positions. We have 2 vacancies. Assistant Director of Public Works is vacant, and a Public Works Service Tech, although we just completed the interviews for that position, and we have made an offer, and we have an accepted offer, and that person is in background, and we're looking forward to having her start on Monday. So, one vacancy in DPW admin. Engineering and inspection has 12 total positions, 10 of which are funded. We have 7 full-time positions. 3 vacancies, principal civil engineer, the associate civil engineer, and the right-of-way agent. As you know, engineering positions have historically been challenging for us to recruit, and I don't see that changing in the near future. The road department has 34 full-time positions, and we have 5 vacancies. And this is a moving target here because things have changed since we prepared the budget. We just completed interviews for maintenance workers, and I believe we have 3 that we're working with that are going to come on board. So we're constantly working on trying to keep people. One of the things that happens is people join us. We send them to class, they get their Class A driver's licenses, and then they move on to other higher paying positions with the benefit of their Class A driver's license. So that'll be something that Glenn and the staff can tackle in the future, trying to minimize that turnover, but that is a constant that we deal with. Lamson Airport, we have 2 extra help positions. One of those is filled, so we have a vacancy with the airport coordinator. And Central Garage has 5 full-time positions, 6 total. One of them is unfunded, and they have 0 vacancies. So we're in pretty decent shape with respect to vacancies, and again, kind of a revolving door with our road department, but that's something that we tend to deal with. We can talk a little bit about reserves. If you have any questions, of course, at any time, please ask. But we'll move on to reserves, and we'll start with the road department, budget unit 3011. There are 3 separate reserves in that budget unit. The first is inventory, and that account represents the value of materials on hand, such as culverts, de-icing sand, patching materials. That inventory is placed in reserve, or we have some of that placed in reserve, and it has a value of $241,000. We have a restricted reserve in the road department, and that account was created to reserve funds for the overall operation of the road division in the event of some catastrophic funding problem. We rely solely, practically solely, on the state and gas tax revenues, and you just never know. So what we've done is we've set aside funding to sustain the operation of the road department for a year, and that restricted reserve has $7.2 million in that reserve. And then our restricted SB1 reserve was an account that we created following the approval of Senate Bill 1, or SB1, that created additional gas tax revenues. We wanted to set that money aside for large-scale pavement rehab projects, and it contains a total of a little over $7 million. There was a reduction in reserves this year of almost $1.3 million, which is proposed to fund various pavement rehab projects. So we dipped into that reserve a little bit for pavement rehabilitation project. You mentioned the subdivisions and some of our side budgets. Budget unit 3062 through 3081 are subdivision road improvement budgets. These are individual budgets. They were created to track subdivisions and other commercial developments that had road improvements as a condition of approval. We keep the funding for those in individual accounts, which is the reason for the various budget units. Historically, we've kept those monies in our reserves. I'm sorry, in the fund balance, but we were asked to move those into reserves, which we did this year, and so all of those individual fund balances have been moved into reserve accounts. And then those reserve accounts will be retained until such time that a project is proposed for that specific development. Again, those are specific to individual projects, and those funds will remain until those projects need to occur. Budget Unit 8463, CSA number 3, Twin Lakes. This budget was created to provide for routine maintenance of a service area that was developed by vote of the property owners within the subdivision. It provides basic road maintenance, annual road maintenance for the roads in the Twin Lakes subdivision. We also have occasional chip seal projects, and that has 3 designated reserve funds. A general reserve, which is created, and it's got unused revenue for future projects. That general reserve has a total of $537,000, which reflects a proposed increase of $104,000. Then we have a restricted emergency account that was created to reserve funds to pay for any damages resulting from an emergency event. That reserve has $187,000, and a pavement rehab account was to create set aside funding for special pavement rehabilitation projects, and that fund was utilized 2 years ago for a large chip seal project, and it has 0 reserves. So with that, that is our discussion of Public Works and the various vacancies and reserves in the various budget units. And with that, Alicia and I will be happy to try to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for that summary. Are there any questions, comments? Supervisor Pyska?
No.
Just getting ready in case. Supervisor Green?
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking at page D200, the last page of 3011, and just some big swings in there that I wonder if you could walk me through. For example, third line, 5355, from 2022-23, went from $500,000. We adopted apparently $17 million with last year's budget, and now it's down at 4.5. And then a couple lines down on 63-01, I see last year we adopted about 3.3 million, and in the request it's 17 million. So, and that may be just jumping from point A to point B along the serial planning of these projects, but it looked like some big swings to me. So, can you explain?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. It's just the progression of the project going from preliminary engineering into construction. So we got moved from one object code to the other. And so that big swing that you're seeing for road improvements, other charges, 5355 to construction in progress is simply the projects that we were in preliminary design for got moved to construction. A lot of that is bridge replacement projects money. It's not, it's funds that are earmarked, if you will. They're specific to projects. They're not a discretionary fund that we can just use any way we want. They're specific to projects. So the projects are meeting milestones and moving on to the next phase.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
And I'll add, if you look at 6301 and 6302 and 6309, if you look at the capital project list, which I'm trying to find for some reason, I just had it. Goodness gracious. Yeah, right here. Under the capital asset list, it does split them up in construction in progress, and then details all of the costs, and then construction in progress for roads, for bridges, and sidewalks are all separated. And I haven't done the math, but I'm assuming that they all add up to those same exact numbers on the bottom of those appropriations. Are there any other questions or comments? I do have some questions. And I apologize, I didn't front load any of these questions, but they're not dangerous. I know that we've been seeing your SB1 list year to year. I don't know that I've seen one this year, but I know they listed like Rainbow Road or a bunch of roads in the North Lakeport area. Have those roads been done already? Because I don't see them on the list here. So I just was wondering if that was going to happen or not. I do see SB1 dollars has been pushed into the Cobb area roads. Just kind of curious.
So you'll be seeing the SB1 list come to your board, I think it's July the 9th. So that list has been completed, and so you'll see it at your next official board meeting. A lot of those projects, you mentioned Rainbow Road, that road is still on the list of projects that we would like to do. We have completed, one of the roads that was on the list for SB1 was Hendricks Road that we completed last summer. So that road got moved to a completed project list. But you'll see that on the 9th.
Okay, thank you so much. And I know that the anticipation is to go out for bids. Obviously, the main portion of the 10-year plan will be the Cobb area roads. We see that on the capital asset list. But there's a whole bunch of other roads listed on there. Some of them have been there for multiple years. Just kind of curious, are you anticipating to be able to hit all those projects this year based on the fact that it's on our capital asset list for 24-25? Or are they just there to ensure that money is allocated and maybe still accumulating, or maybe going through the CEQA process in order to finalize those projects?
Yeah. So the answer is yes, and it's a little bit of both. We create placeholders partly as a requirement of SB1, but also to create projects to just keep them on the burner so we know what we're doing. I can tell you that in the few short weeks, and I am not going to throw him under the bus and have him come up here, but I can tell you that in the last several weeks when, as Glenn has come in and started with the department, the first thing he tackled has been the capital improvement projects list, partly to comply with admin's request for overall county capital improvement plan, but also to help familiarize himself with all of the projects that engineering and inspection is working on. And from what I am seeing, he has really put together a solid list. He's developing a solid understanding of the funding sources and the timeframes, and so I'm confident in saying that you're going to see more and more projects as you move forward.
Okay, well, I think we're all excited about hearing that, that's for sure. We want to see as many roads being done as possible every single year, right? My next question to you, and it's just more of a kind of, I guess, a reality check on our anticipated expenses when it comes to the roads. Let me get back to where that is on 3011, budget unit 3011. We are anticipating this year to spending $38 million. Obviously, that deals with the 34 potential staff that make up the Public Roads Department, Public Works Roads Department, but also it's the projects that are there. I guess the question is similar to the question for the capital assets. Is that what we hope to spend, or is it just to cover all of those other projects that may be still in the works for multiple years down the road? Just because I see us spending historically $8 million, $7 million, $9 million, and 38 just seems way outside of the norm. I know we didn't have our 10-year plan in the past before. There's been a lot of work to engineer some of the work that's going to be done later this year. Just kind of wanted to get a better concept of what we should realistically expect.
Before I answer the question, throwing me just a little bit with historic numbers. I look at the adopted budget for the road department in 22-23, and it was $37 million. So our road department budget's been up in the $30 million range for several years, and I think what you're seeing is the difference between discretionary funding and the overall road department funding. And I know there's probably people sitting at home watching this saying, wait a second, that road department budget's $38 million. That's the total amount using all of the available funding sources that we have and the projects that we have on the books. That's what we are budgeting to spend. Our discretionary funds are significantly less than that. And the discretionary funds are your SB1 dollars, and a lot of the, well, not a lot, but a good portion of the gas tax funding that we receive goes to staff salaries and materials and all those kinds of things. So though the budget is quite large at 38 million, the majority of that is already designated for specific projects, either preliminary design or construction. And so we have to have that funding in place so that, you know, as we work on bridge projects, we have to pay for that, and then we seek reimbursement from the state on that. So that's how that cash flow works. I hope I answered the question.
I think it's good enough. What I think you made the same statement that I have in my mind is, when the public sees 38 million, how do we better explain what that represents? Because when they see the quality of the roads and they see 38 million, it doesn't quite come together, especially when it's on an annual basis. That's what we are adopting.
Well, I can tell you the majority of that is through the Highway Bridge Program. Bridges cost us between engineering, environmental, and construction, we're probably spending $7 to $8 million a bridge. And we have multiple bridges. We probably have 7 or 8 bridges, in a couple of them in construction, and we have many others that are in various stages of design. And you have heard me say that as a Public Works Director, I love the HBP program because it allows us to replace structures that we ordinarily would not have the funding to replace. But as a taxpayer, $7 to $8 million per bridge is a lot of money. And because it's federal dollars that are run through the state, the bridges are all federalized. So we have increased environmental review, we have CEQA and NEPA, and the bridges have to be designed to AASHTO standards, which is a federal standard. And so the bridges are very expensive to build and design, and the additional environmental, and that's all contributes to those higher costs.
Now, and I appreciate the level of access that you've had to that program. I know it was highlighted by Congressman Thompson, in fact. And just a real quick statement on your engineer and your capacity at this moment to do the work needed in light of your vacancies. I'm glad that we have the extra contract to be able to supplement that and make sure that we're still moving forward with all of these projects. So those are all my questions and comments. Thank you. Supervisor Green?
Yeah, just a follow-up question, and thank you. I feel like I'm getting real-time education on deep dives into the budget, and I'm so sad I won't be able to do it, say, about 6 months from now. But having looked at the capital asset list, right up top on page 1, I see a water line for South Main Street and Soda Bay Road, which makes me deliriously happy because that's been a core concern of mine for the time I have been on this board, but I wasn't aware of that.
And that is not on this budget. That will be a discussion with probably special districts or with a lot of the other projects on there from Director Ewing. Not that one specifically.
That's not a Public Works?
No.
No, but if you go down to the roads, you will see the widening of Soda Bay Road, which is a Public Works.
Okay, I'll save my question for special districts.
And the underground utilities and so on and so forth.
Thank you.
Yeah, Scott, I just wanted to ask about on Budget Unit 3011 or 6309. Is that part of the grant that when you were attending the CERT committee meeting, is that the grant that you were talking about? I know there was a grant, because they were talking about some crosswalks for schools, and all three of the MACs in my district have been talking about that. And I also offered to provide some discretionary funds to help with that. Just wanted to see if that was in that budget unit, or is that a different?
Well, let's see if we have that broken down here.
I know we did do a swap with the Canocti Road sidewalks.
It's a different project. The crosswalks it's a different grant. There's one, Kelseyville too.
Yeah, it was a different one he was talking about with schools or something like that.
So,
Yeah.
so the two projects that are included in 6309 are the Canocti Road Sidewalk Project that we received some federal funding through Congressman Thompson, and the completion of the Middletown multi-use path.
Oh, okay, so that's not the one, okay.
No, those sidewalk projects that you're speaking about are,
I know at the APC, there was a report from Caltrans. I know they're planning to do a lot of work. I didn't hear anything about our local county, so I'm not sure.
I know those are on, I think, on the highway. These ones were more along the lines of the crosswalks at the school, just basically at the school, because they were doing some,
With the lights.
something like that. It was a grant that they were either
Yeah.
applying for or received or something like that, and so, yeah.
thanks. Those are going to be in 5355 road and bridge, other charges, road improvements. So those projects are included in 5355.
Oh, okay, okay. And then just to make sure, I did agree to commit some of the discretionary funds to help with that, to ensure that all three schools were addressed. And so just wanted to make sure to state that. And then just lastly, with the bridges, I know that it's been something since I've got on, and I think probably before it's been an issue, is the Spring Valley Bridge. You know, they only have one way in, one way out. And I don't know if that's something that's been addressed, or that's in one of these budget items for the future, or if we need to have another.
That's a capital improvement project that,
Okay.
I think there's some, I think there's an opportunity to pursue perhaps hazard elimination or hazard mitigation funds. And if it's not already on the list, we'll make sure that it is.
Okay. Thank you.
The crosswalks, is this happening this summer?
I couldn't answer that. We're trying. It's a project that we're probably going to end up giving to Coastland to get done. The limited window, trying to get these things done, and we have a lot of projects already under construction. So we're working on it.
Okay.
I think I remember you had mentioned it needs to be upgraded to NEPA, since now it's using federal
That's the
dollars.
sidewalk.
The Kelseyville sidewalk will,
It's a
yes.
different project.
Okay. Any further comments or questions? Let's open it up for the public. Do we have something from our ACAO? Deputy.
DCAO has something.
DCAO.
So on Budget Unit 3122 for the airport, we need to add in some appropriations and revenue. So we need to add to 8122 $45,600, which will be coming from 1781. In appropriations, increase 1,400 to 500, or increase it by $500. 18 needs to increase by $26,000. 26 needs to increase by $13,000. 30 is going to increase by $1,800. 38 needs to increase by $4,300. It was removed in error. The $4,100 was removed in error, and so we need to add in $200 for the pilot's lounge, fax machine, and printer.
And what does that bring our total appropriations?
Give me just a second.
While she's doing that, these were extraordinary requests that we generally don't approve, and see, the department's unaware of this at the time, right now. These are extraordinary requests that generally don't go through until September, but Pilot's Lounge has already been prior approved by the board, and they're going to start having expenses now. So, are you calculating? So, the difference is the Pilot's Lounge of $16,500, and then just about $25,000 for balancing their budget, which is how it's verbalized. There's still about $30,000 that isn't in there that we'll talk about for September. That's towards the department.
So the total appropriations are now at $130,065.
Thank you very much. Go ahead and open it up for the public. Anyone wish to speak on this item? I see none in the Zoom room, no one moving in the chamber. I'll bring it back to the board for action.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve budget items 1903, 1908, 3011, 3062 through 3081, 3122 with the appropriation of $130,065. Let's see, 3123, 8463, 8464 through 8472, 8483 through 8492, 9905, 9907, 9908, and 9909, lastly 9911.
Did we need to change
As
revenues at all, or no?
As amended?
As amended.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I got something else too. I was just looking at, there was one public comment.
Oh.
And is this where we're supposed to take that public comment? It's about Julia Carrera about
The water resources.
Yeah,
water. Okay, all right. Just want to make sure we didn't miss it.
thank you for the reminder, though. Okay, we have a motion. Did we get a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Sorry about that. Jumped ahead.
All right, we're going to continue on, and we're going to start with our water resources budgets, starting on page D47. Director De Leon, keep going.
Thank you. So same approach here with water resources. The department has 9 budget units. The department has a number of responsibilities, and I'll just hit some of the highlights. The management of the Quagga Zebra Mussel Prevention Program, oversight of lakebed encroachments, including leases for existing structures and permitting of new structures, perform the activities of the Lake County Watershed Protection District, which includes, but is not limited to, the Middle Creek Restoration Project, Highland Springs Recreation Area, stormwater management, groundwater management, water quality monitoring and improvement, and flood emergency response. We manage 4 separate flood control districts, and one of the biggest changes to this department for fiscal year 24-25 is the transfer of the National Flood Insurance Program to community development. We have been working together on this transition for the past couple of months, and in my opinion, CDD staff is well prepared to take on this program, and I will give a shout to CDD Director Maria Turner for the vision to see that this program would be better served in her department, and I'm confident that her staff has the ability to run this program and actually improve it. We were on a meeting day before yesterday with a member of FEMA who is very excited about working with CDD staff to tackle some of the properties that just require some minor improvements, and might even see some changes in our community rating system which would be an additional benefit to rate payers or folks who have flood insurance policies in the county. So pretty excited about that and that opportunity, and I'm hopeful that they're going to be able to take advantage of that. The department has 13 full-time positions, with 12 of those funded. The water resources engineer was unfunded this year, and there are 3 vacancies in the department: a deputy director and 2 water resources field maintenance technicians. They will likely begin recruitment for a field maintenance technician. We just recently promoted one to a program coordinator, or a technician, I'm sorry. We just promoted one, so we'll be doing that recruitment here shortly. And your board approved on Tuesday a contract with Coastland for engineering services for water resources. Again, due to the challenges of trying to find engineers to come to Lake County, we brought in Coastland to provide that staff augmentation for engineering services for water resources. So those are overview and the vacancies. A lot of these budget units have reserves, so I'll try to go quickly through those. Budget 1672 is lake bed management. It has a restricted reserve of $14,625. And so that I don't repeat myself on every single one of these, the purpose of these budget reserves is to provide emergency source of funding for any unforeseen expenditures. 1673 is also contains a restricted reserve of $112,001, and again, emergency source of funding. Budget unit 1674 is flood corridor maintenance, and it has a general reserve of $750,000. The flood corridor maintenance budget unit 1674 is to provide maintenance of grounds and properties that we've purchased for the Middle Creek project. And when we purchase a property, the state allows us to take a percentage of whatever the sale was and retain it for maintenance. And so we put those funds in reserves, and in this year, to reduce our fund balance, we increased that general reserve by $485,228, again, to get it out of the fund balance and put it in reserve. But those funds are generated through the sale of properties within the project limits, and that funding is provided by the state. 8101 is Flood Zone 1, Adobe Creek and Highland Springs. There's a restricted operation and maintenance reserve of $19,309, and again, emergency source of funding. Budget Unit 8104, Flood Zone 4, Scotts Creek. This budget has 3 separate reserves. It has a restricted operation and maintenance reserve of $94,000, a flood fight reserve of $800, and a groundwater recharge reserve of $11,105. These reserves have been in place for a very long time. Staff did some research. We couldn't really find clear purpose for some of these. Obviously, operation and maintenance is pretty clear, but some of the other stuff we're a little unclear on. But the reserve funds exist nonetheless, and because they're reserves, any expenditure of them will require board action. So in the future, should funding become necessary and they need to take money out of reserves, they're going to need to come to the board to do anything with those. Budget Unit 8105 is Flood Zone 5, Kelsey Creek, and that has 4 separate reserves: general reserve of $11,851, an operation and maintenance reserve of $4,024, a flood fight reserve of $495, and a modification reserve of $1,743. Again, these reserves have been in place for a number of years, predate anyone in the department, including me. And so we, the first three reserves are pretty straightforward. We presume that the modification reserve was money that was set aside likely to fund a future Prop 218 effort. And that's something that's probably going to need to occur in the very near future, is a lot of these flood zones don't generate enough revenue to sustain their operations. Budget Unit 8107 has two reserves. It has a general reserve that has $25 in it, and a restricted reserve of $264,243. Staff tells me that final budget, we're going to be recommending moving the $25 into the other reserve and kind of consolidating them. Budget Unit 8108, Flood Zone 8, Upper Middle Creek Basin. That budget contains 4 separate reserves. However, only one of those reserves actually contains funds, and it is a capital improvement reserve account that contains $3,099. And again, it is to provide emergency source of funding should there something arise. And while we are on Budget Unit 8108, there was a question about public comment. And yes, there was a question about 8108. A constituent was having difficulty locating that. She and I have had some email conversations. I understand she did locate the information. I also provided some information from our preliminary budget that included additional detail on the appropriations and the expenditures. So I trust that that question has been resolved. So, and she's here, so I suppose if there's questions, we'll deal with those. But public comment has been addressed. And then finally, Budget Unit 8109. This budget has 5 separate reserves. A general reserve of $89,997, a restricted equipment reserve of $27,420, a flood fight reserve of $7,766, a flood matching reserve of $1,175, and a restoration project reserve of $253,753. And with that, I'll be happy to try to answer any questions.
I just wanted to go back to the collection of the past due lake bed fees and where we are with that.
Staff's made a big effort towards that. If you're asking about a particular property, they have entered into and signed agreements. We've received checks from them, and they are working towards getting their past due balance paid.
What's the timeline for that to
We
get?
gave them 4 years.
Okay.
So they have to maintain their current, to pay their current annual, and then we broke up the past due amount into manageable amounts for them, and and they are current.
Okay, great, thank you.
And you sent me an email about that, and I apologize for not getting a response, but glad we got it handled.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments regarding these budget items? I actually had a similar question, but I guess more along the vein of, I see it kind of like property taxes. You have to pay your annual fee in order to continue using. Do you know what percentage pays? Is it the majority? Is it 75%, 80%? Like, is there a need to kind of review how we're going about collecting these things, because maybe it's not happening in the appropriate and efficient way that's within the capacity of your staff to be able to go after these individuals? Just kind of curious where we are, and because we can ask about one, but I'm curious about all. That's quite a number.
Right. Got a feel for percentage?
I would say about 90%.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Alicia is saying that about 90% of the folks that have lake bed leases are paying. And I think that number reflects, there's a lot of turnover in purchasing and folks that walk away from properties. And so I think that you're seeing that 10% is a combination of those turnover. We get people all the time that had no idea that they had a lake bed lease. They buy a piece of property, they think, great, I've got a lake bed or a lakefront home, and I have this beautiful dock, and this is wonderful, and then they get a bill from us, and they didn't know that they had it, either because they didn't review their title report all that well, or it was never disclosed. Who knows? But there's a fair amount of folks that are surprised that they have a lake bed lease. And so staff is constantly updating those and making sure that we're current with that. So it's an ongoing effort. But I would say that it's the majority of lake bed leases are paid.
Okay. I don't think I had anything else specific to water resources. Definitely a lot more work being asked of your department in light of the hitch emergency. Obviously, the Middle Creek is also a large project, but that's been kind of looming, and the process have been gone through for many years. And I know that we also saw a slight increase in your staffing in order to try to accommodate to the needs of the hitch emergency. I guess we just got to see how that works out and how that plays out as we get a better understanding of what is needed from those staff members in order to really move things along. So I just wanted to at least mention that. And if there's Supervisor Green?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I apologize for not catching up to this. So on page D323 in flood zone 4, which I believe is Scotts Valley, under line 23-80, still left over from the 23-24 budget is 165 allocation that former Supervisor Scott had put in. I've been going back and forth with staff on reshaping that, and I think we had a tentative agreement to leave the bigger chunk of this in this so we can do a cost share or something with whatever the latest project is coming down in that. But we also intended to put about $25K or so in a different budget line item for Highland Springs. So I don't know if that, it doesn't look like it translated into this, and I don't know if we need to lock it in before September, but do you recall some of that back and forth about?
Yeah, I am aware of a lot of that back and
with
forth,
Angelo.
and when did we turn these in? April? So, things have happened since April, and so if we need to modify that, I'm sure we can work with admin to get any adjustments made before the final. That shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, I just don't want to make sure we're not locking things in. This has been lingering for a year plus, and I think we have a roadmap, but I don't see the roadmap in here.
Okay. We were just perhaps trying to take advantage of and get more money out of you, Supervisor Green.
Good luck with that.
Every little bit counts. All right, let's open it up for the public. Anyone wish to speak on this item? No hands in Zoom. Please come on up in the chamber.
Thank you, Chair Sabater. Julia Carrera, Upper Lake, here representing the Upper Lake Community Services District Formation Committee. Thank you, Supervisor Simone, for mentioning my comment, making sure it was being covered. I appreciate it. And thank you, Mr. Green, for forwarding my comment to Mr. De Leon. Mr. De Leon provided form number 3 and form number 5 on Budget Unit 8108 that has some significant detail. Very much appreciated. Thank you, Mr. De Leon. Do have some clarification questions. Was hoping maybe there would be someone in the department at another time that could meet with us to go through those clarification questions or send them in an email, whatever works for you, so this board doesn't have to sit further through that discussion and can move forward. Some general comments. Number one, welcome to Mr. Marsh and Mr. Upadahoy, and I hope I didn't brutalize his name too bad. I look forward to working with both of those directors as we move forward. Regarding the department overview, I don't mean to be a Karen here, but the levies are currently structurally sound, it says, and I refer everyone to this feasibility study that was done in the winter of 2021 that says something different. Under the accomplishments, I was wondering what the work was that was done in 23 and 24 on the Upper Lake feasibility study. We don't remember any significant work, and perhaps we're missing something, but we'd like to know what that significant work is. And we'd also like to know what the other 3 reserve line items are called in the reserves, so that we can, as we work on our LAFCO budget, can carry that information over. Thank you for your time. That's all.
Mr. De Leon, if you want an opportunity to respond to some of those questions, I think we just read out the titles of the reserves. If you can maybe
I
just-
think we can provide that additional information. That's not a problem.
Okay. And as far as the accomplishments in 23, 24,
Well, I think, I'm not sure today, and this budget hearing is the appropriate place to discuss that. There were a couple of public hearings that highlighted the work that was done on that report, and that was public information. So we can certainly get a summary of that
Perfect.
To the folks that are interested in it. Be happy to do that.
And I saw-
And as far as the request to work with staff moving forward and getting additional information, we're happy to do that.
and thank you very much. I was going to say, I saw you nodding your head during that part of the conversation of being accessible.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that. Anything further from anybody? Bringing it back?
Just real quick, the statement about the levee maintenance, structurally sound, they were in the report that said that they are structurally sound?
Again, it's,
Not the spot?
personally, I don't think it's the spot.
Okay.
There's a lengthy report about the condition of the levees. There are obviously differing opinions about the report, and I don't think today is the time or the place to debate those, with all due respect.
Okay.
There's nothing further, Chair. Move to approve budget units 1672, 1673, 1674, 8101, 8104, 8105, 8107, 8108, 8109, and I don't believe there were any amendments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. And before we go, just like to thank the administrative staff for all their assistance with our budgets. And, the development of a budget is a department-wide effort. Everyone gets involved, all the division heads, just every staff member has some contribution. And today, or this year was no different. It was made a little more challenging with the separation of the departments and new leadership, but the staff did an outstanding job. And just like to specifically acknowledge Alicia and Sylvia Valadez and Jacqueline Storrs. So thank you very much, Board. Appreciate it.
And just for you, real quick, thank you. I know we did this on Tuesday, but thank you for your efforts in Public Works and Water Resources, and we are looking forward to seeing Glenn March in the position and also Dr. Upadhyay, and we will provide them the same level of support we've been providing you in the past as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
And it will be weird going through budget hearings without you.
Your smile seems somewhat sarcastic.
You can come back anytime.
Maybe I'll come next year and watch. Thank you.
Next on our list, we will continue with our county library, who has 2 budget units, and we will start on page D283. Director Veach, welcome.
Talking things over. So thank you for considering our recommended budget. I'm Christopher Veach, the county librarian. I want to thank admin office for their assistance and of course all the library staff that helped put together our budget. As you said, it does start on page D283 or page 337 of the PDF. And my 2 budget units, 6022 and 6023, both support the operations of the library, promote reading, literacy, and lifelong learning in Lake County. The main library fund, 125 6022, is primarily funded with a dedicated property tax approved by the voters in 1974, and property taxes make up the majority of all revenues. There are also various grants that fund specific programs, as well as a contribution from the general fund for staff positions and to partially cover county overhead. And my budget unit in 6023, Fund 71, historically was funded entirely by community donations and helped support our library collection and events. However, it also contains $1.6 million in grant funds for our capital projects, which is the majority of the expenditures seen in this fund for this upcoming year. And then for the community donations revenue in that fund, we'll continue to partner with community nonprofits, primarily the Friends of the Library and the Lake County Literacy Coalition, who are the main source of community donations for the library. So over the past year, the library increased from the year before in the main metrics we track. Circulation of library materials has increased about 4%. Digital checkouts made up around 32% of our total circulation this past year, which is increasing. Part of the reason for the boost in circulation is adding new materials to the collection. This past year, the library selected, purchased, and added over 3,000 items to the library collection to keep it current and useful for the public. Use of our public computers and Wi-Fi has increased about 9%, and checkout of our Wi-Fi hotspots and Chromebooks have also increased about 40%. This past year, we presented over 600 programs with a combined attendance of 6,000 people. And we also launched the Lake County Library Bookmobile, which has 8 stops over a 3-day-per-week schedule, utilizing state grant funds, American Rescue Plan Act funds, and local library funding. So in this upcoming budget year, we plan to continue to maintain our library collections. We are endeavoring to provide digital resources as well as continue improvements on our print collections. And we're striving for our print collections to have 25% of titles to have a publishing date within the last 5 years. This year, we have already applied for and won a grant to bring a community-wide reading event, the NAA Big Read, to the county. That's first announced here because we just received word. And we'll also be applying for a state-funded lunch at the library program, which brings summer meals to school-aged children at the library. We're also looking at making improvements to our online library catalog. That's the library website where people can search for items that are in the library. It's how many residents interact with the library and has all of our titles, digital and in print. It's currently available through our partnership with Sonoma County Library, and as they're looking to make improvements, we want to join in with them and provide a better experience for our patrons to be able to find what they need and want through the library. We will also be continuing with the Building Forward Library Infrastructure Grant Program, which is a multi-year grant from the state library that I referenced in Budget Unit 6023. There are capital improvements at all of our library branches focusing on safety as required by the grant, and the biggest addition is still to come, which will be solar backup generation at our 3 largest branches. That work will mainly be done by public services, but as the library, we'll do our best to remain open to the public as much as possible through these construction projects. I did want to note there's no changes at the position allocation this year. We have 1 unfunded position, a branch library coordinator, that the library doesn't plan to fill at this time. And that concludes the overview of my library budget, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for your brief summary, and excited about all the things that are happening. I do want to thank you. You were one of the first in our agency of Lake County to really step up for the capital improvement plans to all of the branches of all the libraries around the county, and that shows with the list of projects that have already occurred and are continuing to occur that's on our list for this year. So greatly appreciate you taking the lead and taking the initiative on that. Any questions, comments? I see none. Let's go ahead and open it up for the public. See no hands in Zoom, and no one getting up in the audience. Such a grand audience. Director Veach, no questions, no comments. Your budgets are easy. Your work is flawless. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hold on, we still need to vote for it.
Almost out here.
This is the exciting part.
Yeah.
Right.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move to approve Budget Unit 6022 and 6023.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Carry on.
Chris.
Thank you so much. Next, we have our county council with 3 budget items. We're going to start on page D31. And county council, Quintavano is coming up.
Good afternoon, members of the board. Lloyd Gintivano, County Council for the County of Lake. So as Chair Sabatier indicated, there's 3 budget units here. I'll start with budget unit number 1231, which does start on page D31. That's our office's general county council budget, the bulk of which consists of wages and salaries of staff in the office. One positive update that we do have in our office is that starting early July, our office will be, at least it's anticipated that our office will be fully staffed. We've filled the 1 vacant deputy county council position, and he's looking to start either first or second week of July. So we haven't been fully staffed for quite some time, so that is some good news. And kind of related to that is our office is currently working with, collaborating with Public Services for potential renovations that's expected to occur in our office in order to build some office space to accommodate staff. And I've indicated it in our part of our narrative, still are planning to implement or at least initiate the search for case management software for our office. And as part of that plan, we are looking to consult with other county departments such as the district attorney's office or the public defender, who are, as we understand that they are in the process of also initiating or implementing their case management software. Unless there's any questions regarding this budget unit, I could move on to the others. Next budget unit is 9919, which is on page D446. This is the county's public liability budget. It pertains to administrative risk management functions towards the county's public liability claims in coordination with the county's third-party administrator. As with in prior fiscal years, for this fiscal year, the requested amounts in that budget primarily are based on the estimates provided by PRISM, which is the risk-sharing insurance pool of which the county is a member. PRISM stands for Public Risk Innovations, Solutions, and Management. There's really 3 main factors for determining the premium amounts for each fiscal year. First one is the cost of claims, second one is payroll, and the third factor is the market of insurance. As with the previous fiscal years, it's still relatively a hard market, which means that insurance coverages for certain types of insurance coverage categories are still hard to obtain. But we do appreciate, our office does appreciate the prompt response that we receive from other county departments and cooperation as well from other county departments when it comes to our office's inquiries in responding and making a determination on a claim that's filed and processed through the county's third-party administrator. Unless there's any questions about that, I can move on to the next one. The third budget unit is 9920. That's in page D448, which is the county's workers' compensation budget. This is also through the county's membership in PRISM. And as with the public liability budget, the requested amounts for this fiscal year are also based on projections provided by PRISM to the county or to our office. With workers' compensation, similar to the public liability budget, it is still a hard market when it comes to the premiums that we pay. However, I would note and highlight that the number of workers' compensation claims that have been incurred by the county has been at its lowest since fiscal year 1984-1985. And the total amount of workers' compensation payment currently has been at its lowest since fiscal year 1976-1977. The specific figures are all outlined in the narrative. So as with previous fiscal years, our office strives to get employees on workers' compensation to get back to work as soon as possible in order to mitigate claims and boost employee morale. And as with our public liability budget, our office does appreciate the cooperation from the other county departments, which we've consistently received in responding to our office's inquiries on workers' compensation matters involving county employees. So overall, we do thank staff, well, start off with county council staff for their hard work and moving along with these 3 budget units. We want to thank administration and the auditor controller for their assistance in the budget process. As always, it's still a bit of a learning curve for us, but members of admin staff, Steve, Susan, Casey, Sarah, they've always been available, and they've helped us at this point, getting us hopefully up to speed in terms of training our office in providing the information that's needed for this budget presentation.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions or comments? Supervisor Green?
Yeah, so on the public liability, I get there are a lot of variables in setting that insurance premium, but that's a big old premium, more than $4 million, about 20% more than last year's budget. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. So I guess for me to feel comfortable with this going up, you've said on occasion it will go down if our claims are down for that year, or has that been a trend you've seen in recent memory?
It's the trend, at least in recent years, has been upward. Not to say that it's possible for it to go down, but that is in large part as being a member of this risk insurance sharing pool. The county does not have a lot of direct control over, whether or not certain premiums would necessarily go up or down because it's shared by other counties as part of PRISM. So it is tied into the other member counties as part of PRISM and how they process their claims, the results of those claims as well. But that's not to say that it's possible that it would trend down. It's from what we gather, thus far, premiums are based on those 3 factors, and the third factor is the market environment for insurance, and it is still relatively high.
Thank you.
All right. I am so happy to hear that you will have a full team coming, did you say Monday?
Could either first or second week of July.
Okay, gotcha.
Is what's anticipated.
I think Monday was the previous director that was telling us that, but that's exciting to have a full team. I know that your department kind of touches every single department, ensuring that things are written to form, checking in with any new processes that we might have, even employee situations goes through your department. And so that's a lot of it's a lot of work and activity going through one department, and having everyone on board is going to be helpful for you and your staff. I'm going to open it up for public comment. I see no hands in Zoom, and nobody is getting up in the chamber. Bring it back to the board for action.
Move to approve budget units 1231, 9919, and 9920 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are going to move on to our information technology, and that is Budget Unit 1904. It's on page D73. And Director French, welcome. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Shane French, Information Technology. So for Budget Unit 1904, this budget unit manages all of the technology leadership for the county, essentially all of the network infrastructure, computing, software, software contract management, and information security tasks. I noticed that I put on my narrative that we manage 750 desktop computers, but I just thought it would be interesting to mention that over the last 3-4 years, that's actually a lot bigger number. It's about 960 now, and that's kind of a function of folks, utilizing work from home and having more than one device. Some users have, several devices. So I mention that only because, you're going to notice in this budget, and this year and last year especially, there's been an increase in certain costs, especially licensing costs. And I think I've mentioned that a time or two. But the costs are tending to accelerate, especially for these software as a service platforms, or what they might call a cloud platform. A lot of that cloud-based licensing is increasing every year, and sometimes it's not just single digits. I actually had a vendor hit us with an almost 40% increase just this last year, and it caused us to have to really reshuffle a lot of what we've been doing with licensing in a lot of instances. So I just want your board to be aware that I'm very much cognizant of the fact that these costs are creeping up, and we're trying to be diligent about how we procure and manage these systems, because as more things are moving to third parties in terms of how they're managed, obviously it takes a certain amount of control away from us, and we don't always have a lot of recourse there. So I'm trying to kind of limit our exposure in a lot of ways to some of those increased costs, and sometimes we're pretty effective at that, but sometimes it's very difficult to prevent some of these increases from impacting us. Significant changes from last year. Again, we've got about $130,000 uplift in costs for software as a service or cloud-based services. They're primarily Microsoft services. And the reason for that is because we're kind of shifting away from on-premise mail systems, and we're going to be putting that all in Microsoft's cloud, which it's a good thing. It's going to give us some additional resiliency in terms of data availability, email system availability, and so forth, and give us some new features that are available to us. However, it is an increased cost, and it's something that we're keeping an eye on. And part of that is security spend as well. Security spend has gone way up over the last several years, just because there's just a lot more you need to do to put a perimeter around your network these days. There's a whole lot more threats that we are encountering that we're having to mitigate against. So other than that, about $74,000 in payroll costs increased due to primarily raises. And then finally, I've got about $200,000 in infrastructure updates. Those would be an upgrade of our core switch. Is basically the core of our network. It's a very big, expensive, complicated device. And then some other network upgrades, and then of course backup storage. That's another area that, from a budgetary standpoint, is very challenging, because the more data you store, the more data you have to back up. Right? Every time somebody stores a 1 megabyte file, I'm actually storing about 4 megabytes, because I'm having to make copies of it and put it in various places, whether it be here on premise or up into the cloud for disaster recovery purposes. So just something to be aware of, and something I just wanted to kind of share with your board. Aside from that, I'm really happy that we've moved to having a new object code for these software subscriptions. I think that's going to be really helpful in kind of seeing how these costs are trending over years, and I think it'll be very enlightening. So I'm really glad to see that in our system. So Other than that, not any real major changes. Other costs have remained fairly static, but again, some pretty significant uplift, especially in subscription services.
Thank you very much. Supervisor Pyska?
So just thinking about some of the projects that you wanted to do with the ARPA funding that we're looking at, and then also realizing that that's one-time funding, but your projects are ongoing. How are you considering those moves as we move forward out of that one-time funding opportunity?
Sure. So, I mean, primarily, a lot of the spend that we've had with ARPA has been security related, right? Information security projects, information security subscriptions, and then also network upgrades. We spent quite a bit on refreshing older equipment, things that need to be replaced. And I mean, for the most part, the majority of my ARPA funds or for our department have been accounted for and actually spent. So it's been very helpful to have those funds. I would say there's one thing that I am a little concerned about, and that's that, you know, a lot of the things that we've moved forward with, obviously, it's good to have those one-time funds, but sometimes those one-time funds lead to non-one-time funds. And that's been a little bit of a concern for me because obviously we don't have that that funding kind of moving forward. So, you know, as of this year, obviously we have quite a bit of an uplift, and part of it is in part because we've had projects that have used ARPA. You know, we were able to kind of bootstrap a lot of what we were doing with ARPA funds, but moving forward, obviously, in the future, we're not going to be able to do that.
Any other comments or questions? So I do want to bring something up, and it's budget related, but I know it has a different feel to it as well. In some of the conversations we had, I mean, you're talking about fees for annual licensing for specific software. Other departments also have special annual contract fees for the software that they've licensed and contracted with. And I think when you start looking at the full package of it, not just what you're paying for more the overall infrastructure, not the nitty-gritty detail of what each department requires and needs to function. But when you start looking at all of the licensing fees and all of the contracts and all the softwares that we're using, there is some inefficiencies in how we are handling all of that agency-wide. And so I think that we started some of those conversations in the technology group. I want to make sure we continue those conversations because there are some potential savings there if we find a more global solution to things that can help you with the license increases, because everybody's going to need email no matter what. Everyone's going to need access to some sort of Adobe sign or something that's more universal than just each individual department. But then we're obviously working forward. Our auditor controller is already making those steps for a accounting software and so on. And I think that's going to be the foundation to try and figure out how to better streamline what everybody is doing. And I just, it's getting very difficult because everyone wants to go to live service where they can control us versus us controlling it, it being the software. And so I think we're going to end up with a no-choice situation unless we want to build the entire thing from scratch, which would just be a whole different situation, and I don't think we can accomplish that. But I think there's ways to help out with some of your concerns by really focusing on the global issue of each independent department going after their own independent software when there's ways to share the same software that we all have. So I think we can get to a point where it's less concerning, but without tackling the issue, it does become a concern because we're not changing anything underneath the big umbrella of what the agency of Lake is really doing to fix the problem.
Yeah, and I think, again, like that's one of the reasons I'm really excited about this new object code because in the budgeting system, because it's going to show overall how much is being spent on these subscription services, and I think it's going to be really enlightening, really eye-opening, and I think it'll be another tool that we can use to kind of investigate some of these instances where, hey, we've got some overlap, we're duplicating effort, we're duplicating spending, and I'll just say, I mean, departments have been really good about working with those issues with us in the past, and I anticipate that continuing in the future for sure.
And I don't know what role, never mind, that one gets out of the budget conversation, so I'll leave it there. But I just know that we've tried software and it didn't work, and then tried a different software. And I really feel the technology group is a way to make it efficient on our budgets by having the bigger conversation of questions that may not be asked when people are looking for things. I'll leave it there. If there's nothing further, let's open it up for public comment. I see no hands being raised in the Zoom room and no one getting up in the chamber. I will just say one last comment before we take action. I know one of my key things that I believe in is that I hope that in the future we can have a discussion about hiring a programmer, somebody who can help to identify little niche needs. We used to have somebody who used to program the AS400. That skill set and that program has been upgraded, and those skill sets are hard to find. But I still think getting the outcomes of our data that we are looking for, rather than trying to figure out how we can get something that's made to be so general for every agency, I think would really help us to pinpoint the kind of data and meaningful data that we're looking for, because we collect a whole bunch of data, but it's not presented to us in a way that I think is very helpful. So, with that, looking for action.
Motion to approve budget item 1904.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next, we have our auditor controller with 2 budget units, and we will start with D18, on page D18. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, board and attendees. I'm Genevieve Harrington, Lake County's Auditor Controller, County Clerk. I'll introduce her in a second. As you may know, the Auditor Controller County Clerk Department is a consolidated office of the County Clerk and Auditor Controller. Many of the duties and functions of these offices are addressed separately in law. Functions of the Auditor Controller include, but definitely not limited to, financial reporting, general ledger accounting for all county departments, budgeting, property tax administration and allocation, administration and processing of the county payroll and accounts payable, the A87 cost plan development and coordination, court settlement distribution, coordinating the single audit each year is a 6-month project alone. The CFA preparation, as well as the ACFR, so CFA is the Schedule of Expenditures of Federal Awards. The ACFR is our annual comprehensive financial reporting. Those are all occurring in the same season and require all hands on deck. Having no material findings and being able to say that we are a low audit risk county is exciting for my office, but it should be exciting for the entire county. Just keeping in mind that this affects us all, and we're really grateful for all the cooperation we've received in ensuring compliance with our various GASB and other accounting standards. Divisions of my office include payroll, property tax, and the general ledger financial reporting, which also includes the financial transaction reports that we submit to the State Controller's Office every year. The Auditor Controller's Office was tasked with the responsibility of coordination, claiming, and financial disaster recovery as a result of the multiple emergencies that have occurred over the years and will be presented in Budget Unit 1920 separately. In addition to county services, the Auditor Controller provides services to 21 independent special districts, Fire, Water, Cemetery, the Lake County Office of Education, the First 5 Commission, and our local transit agencies. Services provided to those customers include accounting support, budget, and general ledger transaction processing. Functions of the county clerk include marriage licensing, fictitious business name statement filing, notary oaths, Fish and Wildlife administrative fees, Form 700 processing, conflict of interest code maintenance and administration, as well as a variety of additional county clerk filings and duties as required by the County Board of Supervisors and the State of California. This department is a general fund service department, partially funded by a combination of user fees and services to others. All right, so some accomplishments that have led to goals or vice versa over the last couple of years. Contract management, that's the one I keep talking about. But we are actually uploading the documents into Laserfish now. They're being tested, and so just a reminder, the ultimate goal has been to increase transparency and efficiencies within the contract management. So I know there's been some discussion about that, but I just wanted to let you know where we're at right now. All of the agreements are in Laserfish, so any licensed Laserfish user will be able to see all the contracts throughout the entire county. So if you wanted to know a specific vendor, a specific department, that information is available to you, as well as the payment tracking and how much is left on the agreement. That's all going to be available in Laserfish to any licensed user. Let's see. And just so that's also supposed to align with the purchasing ordinance that that's being implemented on July 1st of 2024. So all of that will happen at once. But that's, like I said, an accomplishment and a goal in one. And let's see. And as you may recall, back in February, the board approved the contract with Avero Consulting to perform a needs assessment for our county. So Avero has been facilitating discovery sessions with our various departments to address their finance-related needs, as well as department-specific software issues. We hope by working with the departments directly that we are able to identify potential improvements and efficiencies countywide. And to that point, I just wanted to add to that as we're doing these discovery interviews, we're going beyond just the finance system, their cash sharing, their permitting, and so forth, because if there are any opportunities to integrate, we're hoping to capture that all in this one project. So that is something that we're definitely looking at. So the current timeline is to wrap up the discovery interviews by end of July, have the RFP written by the end of August, and out by September. Ideally, we will be selecting the vendor by the end of December. The finance system implementation is scheduled to go live July 1st, 2025. The implementation of the human capital module will occur shortly after. It's important we're done with the finance implementation so that we can give the full attention to the HR component. And just to mention, the extraordinary items that are in my budget are directly related to this project. One last note, being able to take credit cards and other forms of electronic payment countywide is still high on the list. I imagine this will align with our go live with the new ERP, but we'll need to confirm that with the tax collector. It was definitely left over from last time. Okay, so 1920 budget unit. The disaster response and recovery was established for a centralized location to track and claim the costs associated with declared disasters. The responsibilities of the budget unit were absorbed by the Auditor Controller Department in 2015, and here to speak on this budget unit is Dakota Hockett, the Emergency Event Fiscal Manager.
Hello, the 1920 budget unit is a special revenue fund, and it is funded day to day through state and federal administrative payments and interest revenue. The purpose of this fund is to track and claim expenses incurred to countywide declared disasters and ensure the county qualifies for as much reimbursement as possible. The 1920 budget unit has reserves held for audit exceptions, repayment of insurance, duplication of benefits, advance repayments, and emergency funds for major disasters. The audit exception reserve is to ensure monies are available for any audit findings. All events except for Rocky and Jerusalem fires are still eligible for audit, which leaves us with $21 million in unaudited public assistance proceeds. The insurance proceeds duplication reserve is to ensure monies are available to pay back in cases where we receive both public assistance and insurance for the same damages. The advance repayment reserve is because we received an advance for Mendocino Fire and we were paid in full as well. The general reserve is to ensure there is money available in the case of a major disaster. Disaster Response and Recovery has claimed reimbursement for 14 federally declared disasters. This budget unit has also administered the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Safety Act funding, PG&E settlement funds, and the Public Safety Power Shutoff funds. The disaster assistance we are eligible for comes from FEMA, authorized by the Robert T. Stafford Act, and the California Office of Emergency Services, CalOES, authorized by the California Disaster Assistance Act, CDAA. We therefore receive reimbursement through two different entities, the timing of which sometimes lines up well together and sometimes does not. For example, we experienced with the 2023 February storms that even in the best case scenario, when both the FEMA and CDAA reimbursements are obligated on the exact same day through the exact same notice, we will still receive the CDAA and FEMA funds weeks apart. In addition, depending on the assistance received and project types, the closeout schedule and process is different from project to project and event to event. Some projects can only be reimbursed by CDAA, even if the event as a whole is authorized for assistance through FEMA. Those projects, therefore, have a different procedure for closeout than projects reimbursed by both FEMA and CDAA. In addition, not all projects for an event are completed at the same time, and so, for one event, there can be multiple closeout dates. It's due to the closeout process that disaster response and recovery is still budgeting for older events. When we initiate closeout through FEMA and Cal OES, they review all costs submitted and settle any projects that have not been paid or that need to be adjusted. If you notice any older events that are still being budgeted, it is because we are still waiting for them to be reviewed by the Cal OES closeout team. As for some accomplishments this year, they include completing the countywide emergency protective measures project for the 2023 February storms event. Departments have already been reimbursed for their expenses. Completing the COVID-19 projects and initiating closeout. While we're waiting on checks for 4 out of the 7 projects, all non-administrative projects have been obligated. We've also initiated closeout on the Mendocino fire and received the administrative expense reimbursement. All told, this fiscal year, departments have been reimbursed $215,263 with an additional $437,332 anticipated to be accrued to the 23-24 fiscal year. Goals for the coming year include wrapping up older events, preparing for potential audits, and creating a fiscal user packet for staff who will be submitting disaster event costs. The budget itself is driven by the anticipated disaster funding. Overall, outside of the administrative payments received, which are used to fund our position allocations and office expenses, the majority of the state and federal disaster revenues received leave the budget unit as reimbursement to other departments for expenses incurred during a disaster event. And thus wraps up the disaster response and recovery budget presentation. Thank you for your time and attention.
And if you have questions for either,
Thank you very much for your presentations, and truly appreciate the transparency that you gave to the disaster response. It's a large number in the reserves, and there's quite a lot that goes into why that is the case. It's not all accessible, and it's meant to be saved for future threats and also for potential audits in the future. So I really appreciate the level of detail that you provided. Any questions or comments? Supervisor Green.
Yeah, forgive me if I missed it in the narrative. At the bottom on page D20, 23-80, admin recommended adding $300K. Can you explain what that is?
That's the contract with Avero. They're the consultant that's doing the needs assessment, having the individual meetings with each of the departments to help us write the RFP to get our new finance system.
Okay.
the reason is because it was an extraordinary. So we made the adjustment after they submitted.
So another $300K just to get us to the point of an intelligent RFP. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, the original scope is really more in the realm of 160,000, but because I know we need more than just the finance system, we added some additional appropriation in case it would help us help the other departments inside the same project.
All right. It's going to be one good RFP. Thank you.
Yes, but you know, it has been 23 plus years, I believe, since the last big finance system implementation. So wanted to do it right one time.
I think we've gone through about 4 iterations of what your computer screen looks like during that same software. It used to be monochrome, then it was CRV, or CRT, now it's flat screen. Yeah, it's been a while and it needs to be upgraded, and thank you very much for working on that. That's one of the most important projects that we're taking on. It really will bring us a little bit more into the 21st century. Any other questions or comments? And I was going to ask some questions, but you answered them all because I wanted to be a little bit more transparent on the disaster budget, but you did a great job, so I appreciate that. Anyone from the public wish to speak on this item? See no one in Zoom and no one in the chamber. Bringing it back for action.
Move to approve budget units 1121 and 1920.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much. Let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break. We will come back at 2:55. Do it. Patrick's giving me the eye.
You made me wait.
All right, welcome back. We will continue where we left off with our treasurer tax collector, budget unit 1122. That will be found on page D22. And Mr. Sullivan.
All right, good afternoon. Patrick Sullivan, Treasurer Tax Collector. I'm here with Assistant Treasurer Tax Collector Liz Martinez. So I know your board's already aware of some of what we've done this year, so I'll try to give you the highlight reel and run through this. Again, Treasurer Tax Collector's office runs 3 different divisions. We have Treasury, Tax, and then the Court and County Debt Collections Division, which is primarily court-ordered debt, but we also assist county departments as well. Some of the accomplishments we had in the last fiscal year, there was a lot on the Treasury side. We completed our electronic check processing upgrade. There were a lot of technical upgrades we needed to do, software upgrades, hardware, in order to get that done. But we are now able to transmit checks electronically. So theoretically, the day we receive a check, if we were to be fully caught up, we can actually transmit it to the bank that same day, and it's recognized in our account. So this is actually further increasing our interest earnings, because prior to this, checks were sitting for an extended period, even when we were caught up, because they still had to be physically picked up and brought to the bank. Now we are able to transmit those electronically. That, coupled with the lockbox processing program, has really cut back on our times. We're able to stay current even during tax season. We're avoiding that backlog by using RTL and their Whittier facility. Let's see, we continue to restructure our banking. We've been able to further enhance our earnings using different vehicles at our operating account, in addition to further utilizing local government investment pools like the CAMP program or CalTrust, and LAIF, which is the state treasurer's version. Continue to work with Chandler Asset Management on the rest of the portfolio to grow that. We're also working with them to help bolster our liquidity, especially with the state budget deficit and some other issues facing us. We're having to expand the amount of funds that we are able to have readily accessible, and we're trying to minimize the impact on our returns while we do that. We did another Chapter 7 sale, another large auction where we started out with 1,000 properties, and that was a success. We conducted a Chapter 8 sale with the City of Clear Lake, which is now fully complete. We have made some other advancements in court collections. That was an area that definitely we've spent a lot of time focusing on. We have now contracted with a third-party agency, so we're going to be going live with them hopefully next month. I believe we have everything in place. That's going to go after a lot of our older debt and see if we have another crack at recovering it. They're helping us as well. They're going to directly manage the tax intercept program for us, which we're getting set up with the state controller. So that's going to provide another stream of revenue where we're able to intercept those tax refunds directly. Let's see, another thing in that area is our transition with probation. We're now consolidated all financial enforcement related to court. So it used to be that some cases would go to probation, some would come to us. Now, once the case is finalized, all cases come to our office. So that includes victim restitution. So I think we're able to provide a higher level of service for victims, partially because we have access to those other tools. So not only are we collecting on all criminal cases and traffic infractions or any other administrative fish and game or other fines of that nature, we're also helping recover for victims and then handling the distribution. So I think that's a major change that I hope will help everyone out. So some of the goals going forward, we're continuing to implement the tax sale module. We're continuing our tax sales. I'm working with the City of Lakeport on a Chapter 8 sale. We do have another Chapter 7 sale that'll be in the works. One thing I would highlight is that this budget is premised off the fact that we are not planning to do auctions of the paper subs solely. If you were to follow the standard practice at this point, in spring we would do 1,000 properties that are all paper subs in Nice and Lucerne. That cost would just be a massive hit to the general fund. We incur costs. It would be somewhere between $500,000 and $700,000 to do that. So I've been working with the state controller, and I think we've found something that we can all live with, and your board will see that come before you, where I can bring forward a sale listing all those paper subs. I would recommend that you deny my proposal, that you reject it, so that we don't do that sale, but that satisfies my requirement. By doing that, that's going to open up more opportunities for Chapter 8 sales. It'll give your board and other county departments time to come up with plans, whether there's government agencies, land trusts, there could be other uses for that land. And if we can move it in a more logical way rather than in a piecemeal fashion at a Chapter 7 sale, that would help. It'll save the county a lot of money. So I just want to be clear that we're going to change up the plan for Chapter 7 sales, and that is what this budget is premised on. Some of the other things we'll continue to work on, lockbox, expanding that. TOT, we do want to increase enforcement for transient occupancy tax. We previously used software. There's a lot more out there now, so we do want to do an RFP and find something that can help identify unlicensed rentals and get them on the rolls, paying their taxes. We want to continue to expand the investment program. We're going to finish migrating cases out of probation's RevQ system. We both have the same collection software, but it was on different versions, so we've finished upgrading to get to the same version. Everything we do, it seems like it triggers another technical issue, but we've completed that. So hopefully by the end of the year, we'll be able to get all of probation's cases completely into our system. But for now, we're actually running 2 systems while we complete this migration. Otherwise, I think that's it. I would just say to court collections, that is taking a lot of my time. There's a lot of changes at the state level there that are causing some headaches. It feels like every year there's a new bill that restricts our ability to collect. But while the state continues to restrict our ability to collect in the way that we can enforce those cases, they're not relieving us of any of our obligations. We're still required to make an annual payment to the state. They're not really cutting us any breaks. So I would just highlight this program as definitely a point of concern, because essentially we need to get more efficient and get a better collection rate just to maintain where we're at. And especially if the state continues on this path, that's going to get harder and harder for us. So I just thought I'd highlight that. And if there's any specific questions about our budget or any of our programs, we're happy to answer them.
Thank you very much.
Gee, sorry. Transient occupancy tax, does that include short-term rentals?
Yes, that would actually be the focus of what our RFP will be. We want software that can help identify Airbnbs and Verbos, all those different websites where they're renting. Another advantage of those is that typically most of those software programs allow access to anyone in the county, which means code enforcement or assessor, anyone else that has an interest in regulating or identifying these parcels would be able to ride along with the use of that software.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I just want to say how much I appreciate what you've done to the department. It doesn't just affect the county, it affects every single one of our major agencies that provide public services in Lake County. Just the extra collections that you've helped create, and just the level of work coming out of your department is highly appreciated. So
appreciate it. I'm lucky we have a really great staff, so definitely thankful for them too.
Yep, thank you so much. Let's open it up for public comment. Any comments on this one? You have it easy, one budget unit. I see no one getting up in the board chambers and no one in the Zoom room. I'll bring it back to the board for action.
I move that we approve Budget Unit 1122.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are going to move forward with Animal Control and Vet Medical Clinic. This is Budget Unit 2703 and 2711, and we will begin on page D177.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, CAO Parker.
Yes, thank you, Chair. That's all right. This budget will be presented by the ACAO, Stephen Carter. We also have the Assistant Animal Control Director, Jessica Leishman, here in case you have any service level or technical questions.
Is she going to come up?
No,
Thank you, Board. So in Budget Unit 2703, Animal Control, here, yes? I'm talking right to it, too. Maybe up close.
Talk in it, not to it.
All right, I'll eat it.
It's that time of day.
So Budget Unit 2703, Animal Care and Control, the requested appropriations for fiscal year 24-25 is $1,625,854. The department enforces local and state laws pertaining to the ownership of care of domestic animals. LCACC provides rabies control efforts through the quarantine of biting animals, responding to loose and vicious dogs, complaints, a dog licensing program, and offering low-cost rabies vaccinations to the community. LCACC also provides humane animal investigations, abatement of loose and nuisance animals, including livestock, animal rescue, and disaster response services, which is the LEAP, and by providing veterinary services to any stray domestic animal within the County of Lake as mandated, which is in Budget Unit 2711. LCACC operates a shelter with a holding capacity of 42 dogs, 90 cats, and nearly 24 assorted livestock. The facility is open to the public 6 days a week, where they can retrieve lost pets, surrender or stray animals, purchasing of licenses, and viewing of available animals. And some of the accomplishments for animal care and control, they continued the community cat program with nearly 400 cats altered, responded to over 1,900 calls for assistance. So they've done quite a bit. Now, related to direct budget numbers, if you notice in the revenue section, in 8122 and 8123, there's 135,000 that comes in and then goes right out. That is actually geothermal funding that is meant for the vet clinic itself, Budget Unit 2711. It just works out better going through a general fund department first. Within the expenses, the capital assets, there are actually 4 extraordinary requests, but only 2 have been granted prior to September. And those 2 are the animal control truck boxes. And the reason for that is 2 of them have been destroyed and already ordered. They just take, I believe, about 6 months to get, somewhere around there. So they've already been ordered and don't want to, in case they come in before September, need to have the appropriations. But in September, also need a Ford F-250 truck and a couple other items. That's all I really have, unless you have questions on animal control, care and control 2703.
Let's go ahead and finish the other units.
Next budget unit is Budget Unit 2711, which can be found on page D192. Overall appropriation request is $589,486, and that's Animal Care and Control Medical Clinic. I don't want to go ahead and read the department overview this time. There are generally a veterinary and a vet tech. Neither one are hired at this point in time, so we are still looking for those, but we do have extra help, kennel attendants, etc. You want to add anything? Nope, not yet, okay. We do have 2 extra help, kennel techs, kennel attendants, to try to pick up some of that slack. Like I said before, this is where $135,000 actually comes in from geothermal to help. Because if we had a veterinarian, we would actually do surgeries, and the funds, the proceeds from that would pay for the services. Without that, general fund or a similar funding source would need to pay, so that, because we're going to have to contract out with veterinarians to provide the services that if we had a vet, we're mandated to do those. We're mandated to do those services. So that's a big expense with no revenue generation. I think that's about all I have for that one as well.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions regarding these budget units? Just real quick, the vet that we have is just under contract. That's why it doesn't fall within the animal medical. Okay. Also, I don't know if it's a constant need or if it's something that has been left over from prior years. There's been on the capital asset list a replacement of truck boxes. Is that being purchased and it's just new trucks that need new boxes, or have they not been purchased? Just kind of checking in.
One of them is from a prior year because it took so long to get, but during mid-year, we added a new one because a tree fell on it. So it's really new ones, just with the same description. It seems like all of our boxes seem to need to be replaced one at a time right now.
And the reason I ask is because it's such an integral part of, you can have a truck, but if you don't have a box, then you can't do the job.
And they're about $35,000 a piece.
Yeah.
And they take, I believe it was 6 months to build.
Yeah.
So you have to plan it out.
I just wanted to check in on that. One other thing, just a quick statement, and I kind of made a similar statement during planning and code enforcement. I don't see anything here that is even highlighting fines or other things. And I feel like, again, animal control is seeing a blooming difficulty in trying to regulate pet owners in trying to meet the guidelines and the rules and regulations that we have in our code. But yet, if we're not putting out any fines and we're dealing with the same individuals again and again and again, which I am certain is what we're seeing for certain areas, then we're not changing behaviors. And I don't mean for it to be a revenue stream, but it would help pay for the amount of services we have to offer in order to take the responsibility that others are choosing not to actually commit to when they get a pet. And so I would love to see a line item and something being added so that we can kind of push forward with looking at doing some of those things. Because I think it's one of those departments where I just feel bad that we're just running around taking care of someone else's responsibility because it's a nuisance to the rest of the community. We have to change the way people behave with pets. There's certain rules that you have to follow. So just a quick comment on that. Supervisor Green.
Thank you. I'll bite my tongue on that comment, but I did have a question about LEAP and whether that needs a line item at some point. I know we're not going to fix that particular thing right now in transition, but it's hard to say we have a LEAP function but not have any call-outs that directly support it. So just that's my comment.
That hasn't been under review previously about the 501(c), et cetera, separating or not, budget unit or not. Definitely will take a look again.
I think it falls in line similar to the COC not showing up on this because it is a separate budget. Yes, it is kind of held and controlled by the County of Lake due to it being the lead agency, but, or at least behavioral health, but it's not something that is within our purview to control or review. And with that, let's go ahead and open it up for public comment. I see no hands up in the Zoom room, no one getting up in the chamber. Bringing it back to the board for action.
Move to approve budget units 2703 and 2711.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Board.
Next, we're going to kind of alter our path through this budget hearing. We're going to start off with building and grounds, or move next to building and grounds, integrated waste management, parks, museums. And we are starting on budget unit 1671, which starts on page D43. Director Ewing, good afternoon.
All right, good afternoon. Thank you. First, I apologize for the somewhat casual attire. I guessed that I would be tomorrow, so you'll see me in long sleeve tomorrow. All right, so first off, thank you in Public Services. Thank you to Katie Galvani, who is here, Deputy Director for Finance and Admin. She's really the driver behind the budgets, as well as her staff, Sheila, Annie, and Dana. So a specific call out to them, as well as admin and the auditor controller teams. So thank you. The Public Services Department has 4 divisions made up of 7 budget units. Those divisions are Facilities Maintenance, otherwise known as Buildings and Grounds. We also have Integrated Waste Management, which is the landfill and countywide integrated waste management program, Parks, Recreation and Trails, and Museums. So with that said, jumping right into Budget Unit 1671, which again was on page D43. That budget unit is responsible for the maintenance and repair and improvements of all county facilities, and that also includes planning, engineering, and construction management of capital projects that may not be necessarily accomplished by the buildings and grounds technicians, but is accomplished by contract, but a lot of effort is done by county staff leading up to that contract. Staffing-wise, we are at about 1.2 million. I'm going to be rounding figures here. Staffing at 1.2 million, which is steady state. Generally, vacancy rate is about 0. As someone moves on, then we're able to quickly fill it in. That's about 12, not about, that is 12 staff, permanent staff. On the revenue side, $283,000, which is a relatively steady state. That is made up of primarily facility leases, the telecommunication facilities on the courthouse roof, as well as Guard Street with child support. On the services and supplies side, 1.1 million, which again is relatively steady state. Capital assets, I'll note that there are no capital assets in this budget unit. All facilities capital improvements are budgeted in other budget units that either have already been discussed or will be discussed later today or tomorrow. Accomplishments and goals, I'm going to breeze past this just in the sake of time, but suffice it to say that buildings and grounds, everyone's walking through it, and you see what they've done. They're keeping the buildings in working order and dealing with an aging infrastructure, so I applaud them. On the non-buildings and grounds staff side, designs are in progress, projects that you're going to be already have heard about or will continue to hear about: Armory, Courthouse HVAC, Courthouse Solar, Kelseyville Senior Center, and the list goes on and on. So that work has gone this year and will continue next fiscal year. Also, we completed an update to the county facilities capital improvement plan, which will be updated again this year. Goals moving forward, keeping that moving forward, but also focusing on planned maintenance as opposed to emergency response. Also transitioning to a countywide keyless system as opposed to a hard key, so electronic key card system. Updating the county's ADA transition plan. And I mentioned that the county, the facilities capital improvement plan, after final presentation of budgets, we will come back with an update on the capital improvement plan. Also planning projects, not just design projects, but planning for fourth floor vacancy is one thing, the sheriff admin vacancy. So there's a lot of planning that needs to be done that is not currently in design. So with that said, one other thing that is not in the budget, and I apologize to admin for this, this is a kind of a last minute request, but in our position allocations, we have one capital project manager. I'm going to ask for a temporary additional allocation of one. We have a retirement that is coming sooner than I'd like to say, which will put us in a bind. And so I'd like to request a temporary increase from 1 to 2, and the funding should be covered through capital projects. So it should be no net effect on the general fund. So we can discuss that more potentially later or as necessary. So moving on to the next budget unit that is there, which is budget unit 4121 on budget manual page D250. So integrated solid waste management is, as I mentioned earlier, the East Lake Landfill and countywide integrated waste management program. Staffing is a relatively steady state at 2.3 million. Vacancy rate again is generally 0. Staffing is 7 permanent support staff, which covers all of public services, essentially our office staff, and then the landfill staff is 12 permanent staff and 2 term staff plus extra help. Revenue, on the revenue side, 5.3 million is the revenue. That is primarily landfill disposal fees or tipping fees. That's at 56,000 tons. The number that is estimated there is based on 56,000 tons of debris, and it includes a minor 2% increase, which your board previously approved just through CPI. The remainder of revenue is from hauler franchise fees, CalRecycle grants, and other miscellaneous such as interest. On the services and supplies side, it's 2.1 million, which is pretty steady state, and that covers ongoing landfill operations. Capital assets and projects. On the asset side, we do have some equipment replacement for a loader and a pickup truck of 176,000.
The project side, the landfill expansion, which is underway, which is phase 1 of the overall landfill expansion. We have $1.5 million for that project. We may need to increase that at final. Your board previously approved a change order that will likely need to increase that. We won't need to increase that until final because those costs won't hit until fall at the earliest, certainly after final. We do have the reserves for that, which I'll go into here in a bit. We also have a landfill gas system expansion, $750,000 for groundwater quality measures, and that's in concert with the landfill expansion project, and then some minor landfill operations office building improvements. Reserves, to touch on reserves, those are shown on page C5. The expansion is one reserve. We have $12.2 million in that reserve. That is a net increase of $682,000 this year. That has been as high as, I think, 17, almost 18 million in years past. And that's as we tap into projects like we're doing right now, it goes down. So the amount that we have now is not sufficient for the entirety of the expansion that we have planned over the next 10 or so years, but we will progressively be adding to that reserve to build up enough to fund it as we build the projects. Davis Street is another reserve. That is for our shared maintenance agreement with the City of Clear Lake. We have $125,000 there, proposing a $5,000 increase. Another reserve is landfill gas system and water quality improvements, a decrease of $750,000 in consideration of the former capital project that I mentioned. Equipment reserve, we have about $1.4 million. That is an increase of $324,000. As we need to replace equipment, we replace it. Sometimes it's $1 million piece of equipment. Other years it's less. So that's just appropriate funding to ensure that we can maintain our equipment. Closure and post-closure, this is a responsibility that all landfill owners and operators have, which is to have a reserve fund to cover the future closure and maintenance after the closure of the facility. And these numbers are established in state law. It proposes a $365,000 increase, which is based on how much airspace we used in the previous year. How much we have to deposit is based on that. So the $365,000 is you know, as an engineer, it's just formula driven. I'll just say that. The same with the unanticipated corrective action reserve, which shows a $48,000 increase. The one other reserve that's there is environmental liability of $1 million. That is a steady, just a stagnant number. That is what's driven in, by state law, $1 million. The accomplishments are, you know, running that landfill and keeping it environmentally friendly. The staff there deserve all the credit. The expansion that is going on, it's a milestone, and that will continue. So I think that's the biggest accomplishment. Goals for next year: finishing the construction of this phase 1, and then getting to the point where we're nearing the completion of the design for phase 2 and 3. We're going to combine those into one project. We're also looking at a landfill gas to energy feasibility study and property acquisition for phase 4 of the landfill expansion. That touches on the landfill, but we look at county integrated waste management, which is the county-wide program. We're talking about recycling and curbside collection. We're looking at an organics curbside collection. Your board may be aware of organics being a push statewide. We are exempt from that requirement, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be planning for the future when we are no longer exempt. So on a voluntary basis, which is what we have, pursuing that. Also a beverage recycling center pilot program. We just recently got approval in a project with Mendocino County. We're waiting on the state to really release the funding, but trying to, I'll say, help the state in their recycling CRV program. It's a state system. They have the funding, and we're trying to solve a local problem that really is a state-driven issue. And then lastly, continued material-specific free or reduced cost programs such as tires, mattresses, carpet, oil, and hazardous waste. So moving on from solid waste to parks, recs, trails, there are two budget units here that I will touch on. First is budget unit 7011 on page D303.
This budget unit is for Parks, Recreation, and Trails. It really covers primarily the maintenance, repair, and improvement of all county parks, as well as, similar to facilities, the planning, engineering, and construction management of capital projects for those parks. It also includes, and I don't want to minimize the recreation and trails, where the department does have primary responsibility for that, and that's a goal of this year is to enhance that aspect. Staffing. Staffing is a pretty steady state, 1.2 million. Vacancy rate is generally 0. Staffing is 13 permanent staff this year. Well, next fiscal year, that is a proposed increase of 1 in consideration of additional parks that we're adding. It also includes seasonal and part-time extra help. I will note that there's a change needed to attachment B. It calls out 9 parks maintenance worker allocations. That should say 10. So I think that has been communicated with admin. On revenue side, department generated revenue is 5.1 million. That's a minor increase. The majority of that is park improvement grants, 3.5 million. It's also from telecommunication leases on Mount Konocti, as well as TOT and geothermal. Service and supplies is pretty steady state at 1.1 million. Capital projects, 4.2 million. The projects there, this is 7011 does have all the capital projects for parks. They're not housed in other budget units, so I'll touch on these. Hammond Park improvements is a state grant of about 2.3 million. We also have Cobb Area Community Parks and Trails, the planning and design for that. Your board just approved, I believe, last week, if not this week, a contract to begin that planning and design effort. We are wrapping up the Clean California Parks Beautification Grant, which is improvements at about 15 parks countywide. They don't stand out per se because it's a lot of different amenities. It's not a significant improvement at any one park. The caveat to that would be Hinman Park in Nice and Middletown Square, where there are 2 restrooms that were put in, well, 1 restroom at each. So those are ones that might stand out there. We also have a riding mower and potentially more added at final when we start looking at what is available through the budget process. So, and I'll leave the Parks Reserve, I think, is presented in 1120, Budget Unit 1120. Accomplishments, the Parks, Recreation, and Trails Master Plan, just wrapping that up, coming to completion here. Hammond Park improvements in Nice, we are at the 90% design phase, so we're very close to getting out to bid. Lake County Recreation Agency, the JPA, working with that. Essentially, it's you're looking at the county staff that is participating in that, and we're trying to make some headway where there is no funding there. We're trying to make the name known, I think, is the best way to put that. Goals moving forward, recurring parks maintenance. I just need to emphasize that. The park staff keep those parks operating, and they deserve a lot of credit. That's first and foremost goal. Second, here we have new positions. They're not in the budget now, but we need to work. One of the recommendations from the Parks, Recreation, and Trails Master Plan is focusing on recreation programming, specifically new positions that would have that as their sole purpose. So recreation programmers, recreation planners. To that end, a goal of this year, before we have the staff, is with the existing staff that we have, get some recreation programming out there. Just to put it out there, probably as the first public notice here, is that we will have what we're calling Lakeside Kids Summer Day Camp, July 30th through August 1st, just a half day for 3 days, just a kids summer camp. Sign-ups opening up very soon, if not this week, then the first part of next week. And really excited about doing that, so we can open up some programming for kids and adults as well. That's the focus. To that end, other programming that we're looking at in the fall would be what I'm going to call the Konocti Climb up Mount Konocti. You have 5Ks, 10Ks, walks. We can do that on some of our property as well. So I've been in communication with Adventist Health, who's talking with Sutter, and it'll be a good partnership with those entities, as well as the Lake Rec, the JPA, and I look forward to other collaboration as well. Lastly, on the goals, well, not lastly, but I just the Cobb Park interim use plan and the final design there, and just progressing with our projects. Moving on to another budget unit, which is 7073, Quimby Parks Improvement. This is page 307, D307. This budget unit is, these are funds that are placed in reserves to be appropriated in the future for park improvements based on subdivisions. So when there's a subdivision proposed, there's a fee assessed to, if certain conditions are met, then the developer pays a fee for the need for park improvements. It's about $3,400 per parcel. We currently have $260,000 in reserve. We usually estimate about 2 per year, so not significant, but it starts to add up. We do have a significant amount in there, relatively significant, primarily from Collier Avenue. So we have a good amount there that is going to be going just because of the nature of the area. Hammond Park is right next door, so we're looking to put the majority of those reserves towards Hammond Park. All right, moving on to Budget Unit 7074, which is John T. Klaus Park. This is a budget unit that is one individual park. The reasoning for that is that it's as required by the trust that how the county received the property and the trust proceeds. It required that the funds were separate from the general fund. So starting with this fiscal year, we have $3.6 million. That comes from trust proceeds, which is the current reserve balance, fund balance carryover, and then remaining trust proceeds. We're looking to spend this year budgeting $450,000. Of that, $135,000 is for planning and environmental studies. Your board just approved a contract to that end. Less than that amount, but we're setting some setting some aside for future planning for this year. Also $65,000 for staff and a placeholder of $250,000 for site cleanup. There is a good amount of cleanup to be done out there. And that leaves in reserve $3.1 million for future work. And that wraps up 7074. So moving on to museums. 2 budget units here, 7201, 7202. 7201 is on page D311. Museums, this is essentially the operating budget for museums. There are 3 county museums, the Courthouse Museum here in Lakeport, Schoolhouse Museum in Lower Lake, and Gibson Museum in Middletown. Staffing is at $335,000, which is slightly up from last year. Vacancy rate is, I'll say, generally 0. Right now it's 50% because we have 1 recruitment open. There's two full-time staff, so and we're very close to filling that position. 1 permanent curator, 1 permanent assistant curator, which is the one that we're filling, and that is an increase from a 3/4 time. And we have the majority of this is part-time extra help, plus nonprofits that are volunteers. So I want to thank them very much for their efforts. Services and supplies, $185,000, which is relatively steady state. I will point out that a good portion of that, $100,000, comes from marketing and economic development budget unit, 1892. And on the capital side, we have $144,000 for a Pomo family sculpture, which the maquette for that, basically the design, will be coming to your board soon for show and tell. That has been designed by the artist, selected through a selection process that included a tribal advisory committee with the museum. So looking forward to that. Accomplishments, two of the grants, one for the Pomo family sculpture. These are grants that we secured after work was already in progress. So we have $67,000 for the Pomo family sculpture and $75,000 for the Pomo gallery upgrades in the Courthouse Museum. Increased visitation, over 4,000 individual visits. I don't have a percentage increase, but it's certainly gone up from COVID. And then lastly, accomplishment here, it's on a county park and it's an internal collaboration, but it's collaboration with parks and a nonprofit organization, History Corps, for historic rehabilitation of Mary Down and Cabin on Mount Konocti. A few goals that I want to just highlight: completion of those 2 projects, the Pomo family sculpture and the Pomo gallery, but also consultation with local sovereign nations for repatriation of artifacts. We're underway with that, which is a very involved process that largely drives our request to increase our assistant curator time and potentially other time. So that's underway. And then lastly, as a goal, is just an increased presence, increased programs, and new exhibits. That's a big push that we have. All right, and the last budget unit that I have, also museums, is the Museum Improvement Fund, Budget Unit 7202 on page 315. This is a repository for donations that are received, and it's intended for exhibit improvements and collection care. So we have appropriations of $5,000, and we're proposing $75,000 in reserves. Of that $75,000, $21,000 is intended for general future exhibit improvements and collection care, and $54,000 is specific donations for the Courthouse Museum Lake Family Pomo sculpture. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your summaries. Are there any questions or comments? So real quick on the change, is that a change that we will be affecting in our position allocation, and will that change affect the appropriations, or were all of the position allocations already accounted for in the salaries that are on the Parks and Rec?
So in Budget Unit 7011 in Parks and Rec, it is accounted for in the appropriations. It was just missed on the position allocation, so that will be amended. And then on the Budget Unit 1671 Buildings and Grounds, the Capital Project Manager, we will need to discuss that with Lars, and we'll bring that back before the position allocation is set.
Yeah, and that was me dropping it right here. So that's through no fault other than my own, is what I'll say, and the and the recent knowledge of the retirement. So.
I will say one thing. You have a laundry list of projects. I'd like to know what's possible within the budget to look at a little bit more than just a overlap and then a swap because somebody is retiring, but one individual dealing with all the projects you have. Because one of my questions to you is, for example, some of your projects that you have on the capital asset list have been on the list for quite some time, maybe 2-3 years, such as the district attorney roof. There's some other roof projects that have been on there for a while, and I understand that when you have that many things to get accomplished, you're trying to chip away at all of them or trying to get some of the other projects accomplished, and it's not possible to get to all of them. I guess a brief question is, on the capital asset list under capital projects outside of the water line, that's not you at all, but I would suspect that the rest, the construction in progress for buildings and improvements, are all yours. Are all of those anticipated to be accomplished this year, or they're just on the list again because of the accumulation of funds and the CEQA process and so on and so forth?
Yeah, the roofs are ones that have been on there for quite some time, and that is not an issue of our staffing, either on the planning or construction side. That was an issue that was external to the department, external to the county, and it had to do with how we were proposing to get it done, and that just didn't work out with the company that we were working with. So I just received proposals from an architect to design all of those. There is a cost to that, and so the numbers that are in that capital budget would go up if we were to pursue the architecture side. So essentially, hiring a contractor to design, which is reasonable. But when we talk about replacing a roof, we're not talking about something that is a brand new design. So it's relatively straightforward. So I think that the answer, I don't have an answer to your question other than roofs are one that have been on there longer than I would like. It's not a CEQA issue at all, or anything else that might commonly delay these projects. It's more of a funding issue. So if we say yes, let's take the architecture design side, great, and we do have a building reserve that we can tap into and help pay for that. But it's expediting it through additional funding.
Okay. And then just to check in real quick, Courthouse Solar, I know we've done some contracts and some approvals here. Is that anticipated within the 24-25?
It is. Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're looking at fall being ready for construction. It's a design, simplistically, it's a design build. So the same contractor is working on the design that's doing the construction. We are at very near the 100% design development phase or stage, and PG&E is working on their necessary upgrades on their side that result from our project. So it's on schedule and should be ready this fall. Now, whether the permission to operate is there on PG&E's side is something else entirely, but But based on the way things are going right now, we should be on schedule for end of this year.
So I apologize. I'm going to ask you a question because I know you're involved in the conversation, but it's outside of the budget unit. I forgot to ask when Under Sheriff Bingham was here about the jail generator. Did we not finish that up?
We finished one generator, and the second generator
The
is...
backup.
Yes, exactly. There are two generators, and it was expedited when we, without going in, I'm happy to go into the details, at least the ones that I recall here. But when we installed the new generator, the old generator was basically not grandfathered in anymore for air quality purposes. So we had to expedite the replacement of that second generator, and that is, I believe, scheduled for this fall. There's a transfer switch that's a part of it. There's a number of pieces besides just the generator, but that is being replaced.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's all I have for you. I'm happy to see, though, that you want to add somebody to your parks. I think your parks look amazing throughout the county. I know that Vice Chair Crandall was saying how people at RCRC traveling through to Sacramento make some positive comments about what they witness when driving through. And so adding somebody to the list of our 28, I believe it is, parks and facilities that we have, I think is going to be great, especially with the expansions that we're doing. If there's nothing further, let's go ahead and open it up for public comment. I see nobody in the chamber and no hands in the Zoom room. I will bring it back to the board for action and no amendment. It's only on the position allocation. Okay.
Move to approve Budget Unit 1671, 4121, 7011, 7073, 7074, 7201, 7202.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to go back to where we should have been, and we are going to invite social services up to the front, and we're going to look over the number of budgets that they have. We're going to start on page D254. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Board. Rachel Dillman-Parsons here for Social Services. I'm the Director, and with me here today is Kelly Page. She is our Deputy Director over Administration, and she is prepared to make her remarks and walk you through the budget and answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. First off, before I run through our numerous budget units, I want to thank our DSS accounting team, Carrie Holt, Nicole Streef, Diana Dixon, Tracy Keener, and Zach Kazaka for all the work they put into this every year. It's quite a bear, and they tackle it every year without complaint, and they do a great job. I also want to thank the folks at the administrative office, in particular, Casey Moreno and Stephen Carter, for all their support. It's always great to work with you. And I do want to let you know that I have Nicole Streef, our accounting supervisor, on standby in the Zoom room, just in case there are any questions that require a deeper dive than we're prepared for. And also, I'm recovering from a cold, so my voice might decide to cut out on me. I am not contagious. Okay, so I'll run down all of the budget units, starting with the biggest, 5011. This is our Social Services Administration budget. This budget is the administrative piece for DSS. It provides our staffing, services, and supplies needed to carry out our department functions. In addition to the administrative expenses, this budget also includes certain program expenses such as CalFresh, Medi-Cal, CalWorks, Welfare to Work, supportive services, and childcare, adult protective services, public guardian, public administrator, and also direct child welfare services. This budget also includes the in-home supportive services public authority contract costs. And this budget starts in the budget manual on page D254. All of our budgets live from that page ending on D278. The next budget unit is 5012. This is Social Services Special Programs. This budget unit is comprised of staff that are assigned to the Public Authority and to the Area Agency on Aging. The next budget unit we have is Budget Unit 5121, General Welfare. This budget unit provides assistance payments to families through the CalWorks program. It funds direct payments to resource families and residential facilities for children who are removed from home due to abuse and neglect. This budget unit also funds the share of payroll costs for IHSS providers who assist older adults and those with disabilities so they can remain safely in their home. The next budget unit, 5125, is wraparound services. This is a bit of a unique budget unit for us. It's the budget unit where we deposit our CWS wraparound reinvestment funds that were collected during a pilot program we were involved in. These funds are used to cover specific CWS services as recommended by CWS staff and approved by the DSS director. Our next budget unit, 5164, is Housing Administration. This budget unit includes operation of the Housing Choice Voucher Program and staffing and support for other housing budget units, 5165 and 5169. 5165 is our Home PI Housing Services budget unit. This one consists of loan payment proceeds from first-time homebuyer and owner-occupied rehabilitation loans that have been made out of home grants from previous years. 5168 is our next budget unit. This is the Senior Citizens Program. This budget unit assists in supporting local senior centers and provides Lake County's matching funds to the Area Agency on Aging of Lake and Mendocino County. Our next budget unit is 5281, General Welfare. This budget unit is comprised of our General Relief Program assistance payments. And finally, our last budget unit, 5282, is the IHSS Public Authority Administration budget unit. The IHSS Public Authority maintains a registry of screened providers and offers training to providers and recipients. The Public Authority contracts with Social Services Budget Unit 5012 for staffing and Budget Unit 5011 for operations. Some highlights over our last fiscal year. We issued $38 million in CalFresh benefits to more than 17,000 residents of Lake County. That's about a quarter of our county's population. We renewed Medi-Cal coverage for over 31,000 individuals. That's 46% of Lake County's population. We supported over 2,500 IHSS recipients with 2,100 providers. We certified 18 new resource family homes through Child Welfare Services. We successfully created and implemented plans to consolidate building space more appropriate to our current staff needs and to improve ease of access for our clients and customers. And we completed the transition of DSS programs back to pre-pandemic operations. Our goals for the upcoming fiscal year include leading the mass care and shelter efforts, which we had a little bit of a reminder of yesterday. And in doing that, we will once again continue to work with our partners, local, state, federal sheltering organizations as needed. We're going to continue to pursue creative ways to recruit and retain staff to help reduce our vacancies so that we can deliver the vital services we provide to the residents of Lake County. We plan to research and pursue technologies to strengthen our ability to meet our reporting requirements, reduce any inefficiencies we find, support our staff, and to provide excellent service to our clients and customers. We also plan to increase collaboration with community partners and provide support when and where possible. We also hope to include the use of a DEI lens to help guide in our decision-making as we are looking at our policies, procedures, programs, and any decisions we are looking at for implementation this year. And as your board is aware, the DSS budget is primarily comprised of state and federal dollars. This year, our total recommended budget amount is right around $71 million for all the combined budget units. The bulk of our budget is derived through time studying. I know we've talked a little bit about that process previous years. We have struggled a bit in our department with vacancies. We've been hovering right around 18% for quite some time now, and that's right about where we are now. And we still have our 3 staff who are dedicated to recruitment, retention, and supporting our staff. And we do also fund a full-time position at County Human Resources. The position changes we have for this year, we haven't added any allocations. Instead, we're trying to be a little creative. We're taking some of our current positions, one in particular that comes to mind. We're taking a full-time CWS social worker. We're going to try 2 part-time positions to see if maybe there's a little bit more flexibility for somebody to come in and work a part-time job. Maybe they don't want a full-time job. So we're just getting creative with what we have. We're changing 3 of our employment and training worker positions to 2 social workers and a social services aide to see if we have a little more traction recruiting for those positions instead of our historically hard to fill and training worker positions. And then our capital asset requests, we have the same request we've had for a couple of years for financial management software. We've kind of held off on that one, waiting to see what the county puts into place. We're hoping to find something that will seamlessly integrate with the county system before we go out and buy something. So that's the hope, that whatever the county chooses, there'll be a module that's just for DSS and it'll be super smooth. And then we're also hoping to pursue a lobby kiosk for Anderson Ranch where folks can submit documentation, make it a little bit easier to get their stuff in. And that will, depend on funding we receive from the state. And as you're aware, our funding for this year is kind of up in the air. We won't know too much more about it until later in the year. We're hoping our allocations aren't cut by too much, but we are preparing in case they are. And that kind of follows along with how we've been spending conservatively for the last couple of fiscal years, just to make sure we're not caught short. The one note I have on our CWS reserves, those funds are very restricted for use. They can only serve those CWS clients that fit very strict criteria. And really they're meant to help as a wraparound to maintain a placement for a youth who may be struggling to stay in that placement. And it has to be a funding source of last resort. So there's very definite criteria. And that's what those reserves are for. And that is about all I have prepared.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments, Supervisor Green?
Well, first, a compliment. I was super excited to see the bump up in wraparound funding. Who'd you have to say hi at admin to get that done? So that's awesome. On Budget Unit 5165 on page D271 at the bottom line item 57-03. I saw no actuals in 22-23 for the home rental loans home program. And so I see 1.2 million budgeted for the next fiscal year. I'm just wondering if we have any actuals tracking in the current fiscal year, because
Can you tell me that
there's a
page
need,
number?
we need to budget for it, but are we making any progress?
Can you tell me that page number again? I'm sorry.
D271. And the bottom appropriation line item 57-03.
So this line item, we try to guess who is going to pay off their loans throughout the year and if we're going to be able to issue new loans. It's very hard to know until we get closer to the new fiscal year into the September timeframe if we're going to be able to contract for the services to make new loans, because very few people do that service anymore, and our staff at housing just don't have the expertise, quite honestly. So this is something that we hope to be able to do, but haven't had very much success.
Thank you.
Anything else? Appreciate the patience on the accounting software so that we can figure out what can work for more than just one department or one section of the agency. So I really appreciate that, and I do have some concerns as well about the upcoming state budget, and I think that there is no need for any conversation right now today, rather than in September, where we'll have the actualities of what that effect will be. But I know that I am constantly concerned to the resources you have when it comes to adult protective services, child protective services, and things of the kind, where the funds are very limited. And I know that social services is going to continue to get more and more important as state budgets start to get crunched. It's not just social services, it's other programs that our seniors rely on that will be impacted, and the need will only grow. And so I'm looking forward to September to really see, especially with our fund balance carryover, what is that going to look like, and how is it that we can fill in the gaps of what has been kind of gutted out by state budget. So, but I appreciate you bringing it up. And I am going to open this for public comment. No one in the chamber, and no hands in the Zoom room. Bringing it back to the board for action.
I'll totally do it. Social services in the House. Move to approve budget units 5011, 5012, 5121, 5125, 5164, 5165, 5168, 5281, and 5282.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all very much. So at this moment in time, I don't have specific direction, but I'm going to try to navigate with what I've been told. We are going to see our UC Cooperative Extension tomorrow. We've missed our special districts director, so we'll see all the special district stuff tomorrow. And so that means next is our district attorney. Look at the happiness. And so we have 3 budget units, and we will be starting on page D91, and our district attorney, Susan Cronus.
Thank you. Hi. I have Tatsu Suzuki here with me, my head of the Victim Witness Office. And Doris Langford, she is on Zoom somewhere in the ether, so hopefully I won't need her, but, normally I do. So she might be able to answer some questions. To get started, in terms of, these are budget units 2110, District Attorney's Office, 2113, Victim Witness, and then 2116 is the Asset Forfeiture Unit. So to start off with District Attorney, accomplishments 2023-24, I was able to hire 2 new attorneys back a while ago, and they've been working out terrific, and so it's very helpful to have more attorneys to cover all of the cases that we have. And then I just recently hired 2 other attorneys just this month, and that's fantastic. And so I'm getting closer to being fully staffed with attorneys. I think I have at least 1 or 2 more positions open, so I'm hoping to fill those in 2024-25. And it really is important because we have a couple of attorneys, at least 1 possibly retiring next year, at the end of next year, but we do have a lot of attorneys that might be retiring in 5 or so years. So it's really important to bring in new attorneys and have them trained and get experience so they can follow forward with the once we have people retiring. So we also have, I think the biggest thing that we have coming, we did establish an intern or certified law clerk position, which is also very helpful. It's helpful for not only to have them in the office helping with motions, responding to motions and everything, but also it helps with recruitment. So if we can get somebody in the office, either certified or as an legal intern, and they like it, then as soon as they pass the bar, they're hopefully will stay with us. And so we're in a situation right now. We've already talked to somebody who's very enthusiastic to come to our office, and we're hoping when he passes the bar, he will stay with us. And so I'm very, very grateful that we were able to start this program in this position. Now, the biggest goals, or it's a goal, but it's kind of a, it's a necessity. So I think that this is the year, 2024, we're going to have to upgrade to a new case management system. And this is crucial to do this before January 1st, if possible, because that's when we have to implement the racial blind charging law, January 1st, to have a system set up where when we charge a case, we get a report in, and it has to be expunged from any mention of names, race, certain terms, basically, so we cannot tell what the race or even possibly gender of the person when we make our initial decision whether or not to charge it. Once we decide whether or not we're going to charge it and at what level, then it all reverts back to, oh yeah, we can see it all now. And the purpose of it is to show that we are not basing, even if we don't realize it ourselves, we're not basing our decision on any kind of racial or gender or other factors. It's a state requirement, so there are several case management systems that provide that service included in their case management system, but if we don't have that, it's going to be a nightmare to try to implement it without that upgrade. So we have been in contact with 2 companies. We've interviewed with them. They've told us what they could provide for us, and we are hopeful that we can make a decision and get that contract with them this year. There's a couple of advantages too to move forward now, because I've talked to Ray Buenaventura, the public defender, in terms of if he would sign on with us to go with the same system, and he's thinking about that. That could save us some money. We're also looking now at a situation where we'd be able to a so-called piggyback with another county that has that company, so we don't have to go out for bid. And we also have forgot what I was going to say. Anyway, we also, because we're going to be required to start using the system, it's going to take at least, we're hoping to do this quickly because of, it's going to take time to transfer the information into the new system. One of the systems that we're looking at is compatible with the court system, so that would make it a lot easier to deal with the e-courts, the system that they have. So that is one of the big things that we're looking at in this in the near future. We do have some asset forfeiture funds for the startup costs. We're waiting for a ballpark figure of how much this will be. We're looking at maybe $100,000 for all the startup costs, and then maybe $50,000 to $75,000 a year for maintenance, depending on what the needs are. But we can use some asset forfeiture funds for the startup costs. And so that would be a great accomplishment to get done this coming fiscal year, well, soon to be. Okay, so then our victim witness office, they provide so many services to victims. They're so essential for us to be prepared for court, to present a really good case in front of juries. The victim witness advocates, they bring in the jurors, they accompany the victims to court. They stay with them. They meet with us when we're talking to victims of crime, preparing them for court. They coordinate travel. They do so much. We also, our victim witness office includes our multidisciplinary interview center, which is fantastic. It's a safe place for children to be interviewed. And so we are really, the attorneys depend on our victim witness office every day. So they're a very important part of our office, and they do a lot of other things too. And there's, as you've been probably hearing all day, there's a severe proposed cuts to the funding for victim witness. And if that was to happen, we would not, basically we wouldn't be able to fund more than just maybe one person. And that we would not be able to do what we're required to do under law and provide services to people in the community if that happens. So I'll let Tatsu talk about that for just a couple minutes.
Good day, Board. Thank you for allowing me to speak. So just to give you a little bit of numbers from our office, so last fiscal year, we assisted, so basically from July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2023, we assisted a total of over 1,300 victims and provided over 11,000 services to survivors in Lake County. Now, the VOCA funding cut has been, VOCA funding meaning Victims of Crimes Act funding cut, has been all over the news for the past 6 to 8 months or so, where they have proposed approximately 40%, which is the federal grant cut, which is allocated to all the states in the United States, and that was proposed to be decreased by 40%. Now, the Lake County victim witness current situation and consequences is that we're anticipating 44.7% reduction in this amount, which basically, so our office, we have 4 individuals, a forensic interviewer, myself, and 2 advocates. 3 of those positions are VOCA funded, Victims of Crime Act funded. This 44.7% reduction would equate to a $138,659 cut, which equates to 1.725 positions cut out of those 3 individuals. There are 2 assembly bills that were working their way through the California Assembly. One is AB 1956, which in a nutshell basically would award, let's see here, priority crime victim services funding that awards office if 10% or more was cut from the federal grant, so the state would cover this. And this is an assembly bill that is currently held in committee, so it will not be going anywhere, at least for the foreseeable this year. So that assembly bill has not come through. There's Assembly Bill 2432. This bill creates new revenue sources to provide ongoing funding for crime victim services in California. The bill holds that bad corporate actors accountable for financial and legal wrongdoing. It establishes new fines, which will be then funneled to the California Victims Fund and given to the crime victim service providers. However, this is not an immediate funding. It's going to take a while to happen. It was amended in the California Senate and re-referred to the committee back just last week, June 13th. And currently, the California budget for fiscal year 2024. The legislature has included $100 million to backfill the VOCA fund and to fill that gap. This amount is in keeping up with the amount that Cal OES requires to avoid that 44.7% cut to all of the counties. But that requires this to be included in the final budget and signed by both the legislature and the governor. So that is not, that's still, I believe, still in negotiations of what the final budget is going to be. So that is not something that we could 100% guarantee that will be there or not. And ultimately, there is a California Penal Code 13835.5, which outlines mandatory services for crime victims and survivors. And with this cut, it will maybe reduce our numbers to 1, and we may have to consider closing the division without funding assistance to fill that gap. So that is where we are currently in hopes of California coming through with some sort of funding or some assistance somewhere.
And I'm also in contact with Mike Thompson, our senator, assembly person, I'm sorry, in the House. He's reached out to me, and as well, he supports funding, and he's doing what he can, and also our state representatives as well. We've reached out to them to fund this and support this. If state funding, if the feds don't come through. So, and then our last, but my last budget is 2116, the asset forfeiture funds. We have, I'm not sure exactly how much money we have in that, but we continue to get asset forfeiture funds in there, and we have to, obviously, we get a small portion of it, and then it goes to the agency. The majority of it goes to the agency that did the case, but we do have a substantial amount of funds accumulated, and that's why we would be able to use some of those funds for the new system, case management system. So with that, I will answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation and also your advocacy for what your needs are. I may be corrected, but I'm looking at your asset forfeiture reserves, and it looks like it's $751,900, which is a decent amount.
Yes, yes.
And I know that we had a presentation at CSAC regarding the racial blind. I know the Yolo County District Attorney had already worked on getting his own software prior to that becoming a state law. And it would be great if we can use that in multiple departments rather than just one. And in my mind, I was thinking, even from an HR perspective, in making sure that we're doing an unbiased process with our staffing when we're dealing with personnel issues might be something fun to even just talk about and see if it works as well. Just because I think that the issue that is being dealt with is not just an issue in crime, it's an issue way outside of just that. So it got me thinking of what other departments might be able to benefit from looking at something like that. And also another CSAC session I was in was the fact that every state mandate was on the table for not being supported. And it's not good news at all for anybody, and I'm sorry that you guys are in the crosshairs as well. Thank you so much for your presentation. We have a question from Supervisor Green.
Thank you. Appreciate the need to pull the trigger on the software, but I don't, in the budget as presented, I see like barely $20K allocated for software as a service. So between your asset forfeiture and whatever you're going to do before you come back to us in September, clearly we're going to need some additional detail. I don't know if you've already been to Technology Committee to talk about these needs, but the clock is ticking. One thing you did mention in your presentation, and the clock will be ticking on that, will be care court implementation. So Do you have any detail about the level of advanced planning that's been done on your office for care court? And do you have any unanticipated costs that you're going to incur as we move closer to implementing that?
Well, we have the mental health court committee with the courts, and I mean, as far as I know, I mean, right now, we don't have any current plan in regards to the care court, different from what we're doing now. The courts have not really established any procedures on that. Other than mental health court.
Well, we do have an implementation deadline coming up, don't we? Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Crandall?
Yeah, it's unfortunate to hear about the victim witness division and cuts that you may be looking at. I've attended a couple of those of court cases with folks in there, and you do some heavy work. It's a lot to take home as well, and I understand that you probably aren't compensated as such as well, and so it's very, very difficult to deal with the funding that you have. The two bills that you mentioned, is there some information you can send to me so I can talk with RCRC about some of this funding? I know they deal with it as well. So if there's some things maybe we can meet about, I would like to try to help advocate. And then also, I'm looking at the, sorry, I had it, there it is, asset forfeiture. I know it says that it can't be used to supplant county funds that would normally support the law enforcement or prosecution efforts, but is there a way that that could be used to maybe help them? Because I do understand that you serve a lot of people, and as Director Jones had mentioned earlier, we have a lot of folks with behavioral health issues, and we have a lot of victims in the county, and I think it's essential that we have this service, but I mean, I understand if you can't. I just was asking.
Well, that's the problem. I mean, in terms of our asset forfeiture staff, I don't think we can, use those funds to staff an extra person or pay for the salaries. So that's the problem. And with, I mean, our staff is really who put in the work and talk to these people and assist them. So it's more than just giving these individuals money I mean, the state obviously has a compensation fund for victims, and victim witness helps them apply for those funds, but I don't see any way around it at this point to use that money for salaries or to increase salaries.
I see. Yeah, I just worry. I know that they assist victims to get into court, to be brave enough to go to court, and at times, if they don't have that advocacy, then the case doesn't go through. The assailant just kind of gets off and then does it again, and we're back at square one. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's a to-be-continued conversation.
Right, yes.
Again, in the final budget, I think we might have a deeper conversation based on the realities of if some of those bills have changed the outcome. And one of those bills sounds like it's not going to have any impact whatsoever on this one, but it'll still be around possibly, and at that point, maybe looking to have a letter of advocacy coming from the board might be in favor of that. If there's nothing further, let me open it up for public comment on these budget units. I see nothing in Zoom and nothing in the chamber. I'm going to bring it back to the board for action.
I move that we approve budget units 2110, 2113, and 2116.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have our assessor recorder, Mr. Ford, coming up, and we have 5 budget units. We're going to start on page D26. Good afternoon.
So good afternoon. We'll start off, as you said, we got 5 business units. Kind of typical, I'll kind of go a little fast, and then I'll kind of wait for you guys to start asking questions, and we'll backtrack a little bit. So we'll start off with the 1123, which is the assessor's budget. As you know, the assessor is basically tasked to do all the taxable properties within the county boundaries. And so under that, the accomplishments we have done for this year is we did set a goal, which is one of our last big buckets, to attack the outstanding permits. And we have accomplished all the SFD, which is a big accomplishment. That is quite a bit of work this year. We will be closing the tax roll on the 25th, which that will then land at that point, which is big. That's our last big bucket. The remaining stuff in that bucket is much smaller, like, you know, gazebos, some solar that's not even taxable, or at least not taxable on the first go-around. And so that will be attacking this year. That's probably our last big bucket. When I first took over about, now at this point, 8-ish years ago, I estimated it would be about 10 years to fix it. And so we're a little bit ahead of schedule because that's pretty much our last big bucket. Once we fix that, we're pretty much where we need to be. All assessors' offices have different components, and any given day, the different components can be, you know, a little bit behind, a little bit ahead, depending on what's going on. After we fix the permit bucket, we are pretty much on track with where we should be, which that's a little bit ahead of schedule from my initial estimate. We did have additional staff pass the basic appraiser exam, which is good because that means we're moving forward with keeping our staff certified. And these are brand new people we just brought into that section. They passed it within this year, which is kind of really what we're looking for. We don't want somebody out there for a couple years. We really want it within about the first year, especially if they have the education that they can sit. Continued training, as always. Our goal for this year is we are going to reduce the use code. I think we've talked about it in the past. Our use code produces about, I think it's about 1,600 combinations. We generally use about 30-ish. And so that has been ongoing for a long time. It takes a little bit of doing to do it at the right time. And the honest answer is we really want to do it right at the close of the tax roll. We were hoping to do it right as our tax roll happened, but we don't think, we've got a couple other things going on at the same time. We don't think it's wise to do it this time, so we will be shooting for next year, same time. And that's our goal. As far as the budget itself, you can see it's relatively flat. We've got, you know, some things that are kind of out of our control. The PERS, of course, is a delta between the, well, if you look at 24, 25, and 23, 24, you see a delta between those and insurance health and insurance public liabilities. We don't necessarily control those. Public liability is a open case that was before my time, and so that's where that's trying to recognize. Then we'll move on to 2707. And like I said, I'm just going to keep going, and then we'll get to the end. So 2707, the recorders. Let me go back to the 1123. So we have 4 vacancies. Those are hard to fill. We have been working on those, but we've done numerous recruitments on those and have had either nobody show up or nobody qualified show up, or even have hired somebody and they left within a month. So we've been struggling on those last 4. The people we have really good retention, and they've been really steady with us, progressing, doing really well. Other people we've struggled on the ones where people have either retired and not been able to replace them, or they've left on a leave and then come back. And so those 3 or 4 we're really struggling to try and replace those, and that's key. But 2707, we'll move on to the recorders. This year we were able to replace all our guys. We are fully staffed. Now when I say that, that also means we're new. We got probably about 50% of our staff that's fairly new, which means they're in the cycle of learning. We train all the time, as you guys have heard in the past, and they are catching up pretty fast, but they are newer, and so that is just what it is, and we will increase working on that. As far as you can see our accomplishments, training the new staff, hiring the new staff, and this year, which is why we're not doing the use code, is because we're dead in the middle of doing the implementation for Tyler. And hopefully, as soon as Tyler gets implemented, which should be in about another month and a half, that's the first step. And then after that, once that gets digested into the department, we will be looking on doing e-recording, hopefully somewhere around December, January-ish. That's our goal. I don't want to throw that out there and have people go, oh, it didn't happen exactly. It's all based on the steps that are occurring right now, and making sure that those go through smoothly. So far, the implementation is going fairly well. but that's what we want to see. We want to see it go fairly well. Our staff go through it. Anybody who's gone through an implementation, there is no perfect implementation. They are all not fun, but you do the best you can to implement it, train it. We're going very good on that path. So that's really good news for that department. That's years in the making trying to get to that point. And everything else is basically just set up, ready to go on that. Just waiting for this to kind of get there, get our module, get the system, the new system implement, and then we'll be on our way. And we'll jump into what you would call either trust funds or special revenue funds. And this is where we would probably talk about reserves, I guess. Let me say before we get into any of these have definitions. And so the definitions are basically, definitions apply to me, definitions apply to basically accounting rules. So the only way somebody can actually touch the funds, reserve or otherwise, would be if it falls within the definition of each one of these funds. So I cannot spend it, and these are all recording, so I cannot spend it on the assessor side, I can only spend it on the recorder side, and specifically for that definition. So recording micrographics, we got our redaction project finished for some past redaction that had not been done before my time, but we caught up on that project. New staff, the new staff implements with this through micrographics in indexing and verifying. They are training, the new staff is training, and the old staff is getting more training. Of course, we'll continue that, and we hope to do some projects and scan additional old records for preservations. We have some stuff, again, before my time, but stuff we want to catch up that's different components of the index. Then we go to recording modernization, kind of same type of scenario. This is where Tyler is being paid out of, and this is definitely within the use of that fund. And so the system is being paid through that. We also can pay for anything that modernizes. So we can pay for additional redaction, we can pay for additional books, any other scenarios like that. As you can see, our goals is to rebind another batch of books, which is binding, deacidifying, preserving, encapsulating, depending on what it needs for the documents to make sure it preserves. Once we deacidify, preserve, encapsulate, depending on the scenario, it's about 150 years out in the future that it preserves for that book. And that's what's part of our mandate, but that's what we want to continue to do. We've done, previous assessor did quite a bit of it in the lobby that you see. We've done another chunk. We have some more that we definitely want to do, and we're kind of just doing it in stages. That'll be paid through that fund. Next one is recorders, vitals, and health statistics. We, of course, again, are training new staff. We got about 50% new, so we're going through that. Our intention, hopefully, is if we can get the other goals in the Tyler, the e-recording, all the things we've talked about for our goals, we intend to look at a remote kiosk. We've looked at it in the past. We kind of held off on it because there's a couple things, with other departments and with our department. So as soon as we can get these other ones, we're hoping to get that in by end of year, which will allow the ability for greater accessibility within our department. So that's pretty much it. Any questions?
Comments, questions? Supervisor Green?
Yeah, I'm afraid I don't want to know the answer, but I see two different reserve funds, 390.00, 392.00, but those reserves are spread across these three micrographics, modernization, and vitals and health stats. So, and they're big dollar amounts, and they're different dollar amounts given the relative scale of the budget. So what's the why do we have two different reserves that are kind of sprinkled about these functions?
You actually should have three different reserves, and it's going to be one tied to, and think about it from an accounting standpoint. My first two budget units are general funds, so they have no balance sheet whatsoever. Every other one that is not a general fund is going to have its own balance sheet. So you should expect a balance sheet and or reserve for every single one of those. So three reserves for them, one for each one of these. These are actually stated in rules and regulations, called out exactly for, in certain cases, $1 for each one of those collected on the fee. And so that is going to continue to grow, and as it does in every recorder's office. It's only intended to be spent on what it's used for. So sometimes it goes down, sometimes it goes up. And in our case, because of different things when I first arrived, some of the projects took a while to go. The guy before me had not spent any of it. And so I inherited a fairly large balance. We have spent it on projects, different redactions, different in this case Tyler, rebindings, different things that apply, but even as we do those, some of those are a year-long project. And so we spend it as we can get the projects through. But that balance will probably stay the same or grow through my time because it keeps getting funded as it goes along. And that is called out in the regs.
But you're saying the regs actually call out for one reserve for like Fund 182?
No, that's generally accepted accounting principles.
Okay, thank you.
So it's basically, it's a special revenue fund, it should have a balance sheet. And so if it's, in the case of the general fund, it's not going to have a balance sheet, we share all the balance sheet as general fund, as auditor controller can explain. All general fund departments, we don't have a balance sheet, we all share it into one big bucket. Every other one that is separate is going to have its own balance sheet. And so by default, think about it from an accounting standpoint, reserve is just another form of retained earnings, right? So whatever you use or don't use at the very end is going to drop off to the end and create retained earnings, i.e., in its pseudo way, a reserve.
All right, thank you.
Does that help? I don't know if that explains it all.
Close enough for today.
Okay.
And I'll add a little bit to that. I know every other one of your reserves shows somewhat of a depletion from being utilized for its purpose that it's there for. I'm not seeing that for the micrographics. Is that because we're behind on getting that really going full steam? I'm seeing very small incrementals of expenditures occurring year to year, and here we're going from 605 to 749 to 793,000.
Absolutely.
And I guess in my mind, I'm like, is there a maximum of what the reserve should look like before it really kind of rings a bell that we need to spend that money?
I can double check on the regs. There's nothing in the regs that I've ever read on any of these funds that calls out for kind of a maximum. The thought is that these are all set apart to make sure that, like in the case of vitals, that we have those vital records. Because once they go through, like let's say a birth, once it goes through the medical department, right, it's going to come to us for house, safekeeping. And we need to make sure that those records and those systems are accordingly okay, right? In the case of some of the projects we want to see in the future, we don't know if we'll get it done, is scanning of those and kind of indexing of those. And so we will deplete it at that point, but there's not a lot of projects in vitals. And so, but I've never heard anything about calling out, shutting down those. I can go take a look and see if there's any way that, hey, we feel there's a max. The only downside is it can be kind of confusing for industry if you push a dollar out and then you push a dollar back. A lot of times the industry, and we hear it through our associations, they like to see it flat and at least predictable. And so that's, again, I kind of inherited a big chunk of that, but we do not touch a lot of vitals at this point because we don't have a lot of projects to do. The big one is going to be the one I described. Does that help?
I mean, it does, but it's a fee, and there's a purpose for the fee, and if it's not being utilized, then it feels like I have to ask, why are we collecting the fee? And so I think
that's a fair...
You provided the best answer, I think, that you are able to provide, and we'll see what it looks like in the following years. It doesn't look like this year you're planning to utilize it in a way that will take off some of the reserves. The reserves is planning to grow.
I will say, just if I can add, is if we can get through all the projects, you just heard about 3 or 4 fairly, heady projects. We can get through those fairly good with the nice and smooth. My soft project would be going through that project I just described. But that is, the other ones have to go pretty smooth. They allow enough time.
And just one last comment. I appreciate your efforts in going through all your extra buckets of things that you needed to get through, your Prop 8s, your new construction, all of those things. I know that was a great point of concern when I started just about 6 years ago, but it's nice to see the progress that you've been able to make with your staff, and it looks like we're in a better place today, so appreciate that.
I appreciate it.
Let's go ahead and open it up for public comment. Nobody in the chamber, nobody in Zoom. Bring it back for action.
I move that we approve Budget Unit 1123, 2707, 2708, 2709, and 2710.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. I want to check in with CAO Parker. We have skipped everything that we needed to skip as far as the UC extension and special districts. The last piece is your department with all of the administrative budgets. Would you like to carry those over to tomorrow so we can finish? Usually it's kind of like the culminating conversation. Okay, I wanted to check in rather than make that decision on my own. So it sounds like we are adjourning for the day, and we will continue from where we left off with, like I said, our UC cooperative extension, our special districts, and administrative budgets, and we will reconvene tomorrow at 9 a.m. Thank you for joining us.